Eyes only a dog could see. Under the lazy hum of cicadas and the sweet promise of popsicles, Fox Hollow's Maple Ridge Elementary seemed like any small-town paradise. But when the ice cream truck jingle faded into Bruno's unexpected growl, Officer Lena Hart knew something was terribly wrong. To the world, Bruno was a protector. To the unseen two children locked inside that pastel prison, he was the first hope of rescue. In the seconds that followed, routine patrol turned into a high-pressure pursuit. Gravel kicked up by fleeing tires, hearts pounding as the battered truck came to rest. Inside, the chill of hidden metal met the warmth of sisterly bonds tested by fear. And then came Bruno, licking tiny hands, his mere presence a promise of safety. From that day on, Lena and Bruno's mission led them through abandoned photo studios, surveillance-laden basements, and clandestine routes crossing state borders. Yet through every dark revelation, their bond illuminated the path, a reminder that loyalty can break the chains of cruelty. Join us on this journey from that first bark to the final sting operation, and see how one dog's unwavering instincts restored hope where it was nearly lost. The town of Fox Hollow was the kind of place where Sundays moved like molasses slow, golden, and just a little too quiet to suspect anything wicked. White porches gleamed under the southern sun, rocking chairs creaked in rhythm with cicada song, and kids pedaled rust-speckled bikes with dusty sneakers and grass-stained socks. Officer Lena Hart had lived in the region long enough to understand its rhythm where peace often wore a disguise and stillness had teeth. She sipped coffee from a dented steel thermos, elbow-propped on the open window of her cruiser, watching as Bruno, her German Shepherd K9, sniffed the air through the passenger side crack. The dog's ears twitched slightly once, then again before relaxing. "Don't get my hopes up," Lena murmured. Her voice was rough from too many night shifts and not enough sleep.
Maybe today really is just quiet.
Bruno gave no response. He never did, unless it mattered. Their patrol route curved past Redfern Park, the town's communal backyard. It was the kind of scene that would make any outsider drop their guard parents chatting over lemonade thermoses, toddlers chasing bubbles with squeals that melted into summer air, and teens trying to land kickflips near the empty fountain. But Lena knew better. She eased the cruiser forward down Millstone Avenue, nodding to the town librarian watering her petunias. Across the street, someone had set up a portable speaker blaring early 2000s second pop music. Bruno's nose twitched again. He shifted in his seat, not restless, just aware. Then came the sound. It floated on the breeze like something innocent, something nostalgic, a tinny jingle. "Do your ears hang low," echoed through the trees in a clunky loop, the kind played from a speaker older than most of the kids in the park. The ice cream truck, painted in pastel blues and faded yellows, with a grinning cartoon duck licking a popsicle, it rattled slowly along the gravel path beside the field. Kids started to gather laughing, waving dollars in the air. The driver gave exaggerated nods and smiles, hand raised in that overly rehearsed wave meant to say, "I'm harmless." Lena didn't even look up from her thermos, but Bruno did. He rose from his seat slowly, muscles tensing beneath his black and tan coat. His ears pointed forward like arrows. Then came the sound she never ignored, a low, grinding growl, deep from his chest. The kind that didn't end in barking but in action. Lena turned. "What is it?" Bruno's nose was pressed against the windshield. His hackles bristled. The growl grew sharper, short bursts. Then he barked. Once, twice, a pause. Then 3 in a row, hard and loud. "Bruno, down," Lena said instinctively. He didn't. He never disobeyed unless the stakes were higher than her command. Something in her gut shifted an old, cold weight she hadn't felt since New Orleans, years back, when a call went south and a basement door led to something they never put in the report. Bruno let out a guttural snarl, then lunged toward the passenger door. Paws against the glass, he barked again, sharp, urgent, eyes locked on the truck. Now Lena followed his gaze. The truck had stopped near the corner of the basketball court. The line of children had grown. Parents checked their phones. The driver, male, tall, mid-52nd, stepped out from behind the window. He wore a faded white shirt, apron stained with syrup, and a plastic name tag that read, "Buddy." He waved again, too wide, too practiced. Bruno was shaking now. Lena's heart started to race, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel. She put the cruiser in park. When she stepped out, the heat slapped her face and the hum of cicadas filled the pause between her steps. Bruno barked louder now, pawing the door to get out. "Easy," she whispered, opening the backseat door and unclipping his harness. He was out before she could blink, tail low, body coiled like a spring. "Ma'am, is everything okay?" asked a woman nearby, holding her child close. "Just a precaution," Lena said, flashing her badge. "K9 alert. Everyone, please step back from the truck." The driver noticed now. His smile faltered. His hand gripped the service window as Bruno snarled and snapped toward the rear of the truck. Lena's fingers brushed the radio on her vest. "Unit 12 requesting secondary," she said calmly. "Potential escalation. Location, Redfern Park, ice cream vendor, possible alert." The man leaned out the window. "Everything all right, officer?" he said, too cheerful. "Just ice cream and rocket pops today." Bruno lunged toward the back of the truck and began clawing frantic, as if something inside was screaming but only he could hear it. Lena's hand rested on the sidearm at her hip. That was when her training kicked in instinct, layered atop instinct. Something's not right. The breeze shifted. Bruno stopped barking. He stared at her, just for a second. Eyes locked. That look, the one she dreaded, was the same he gave 2 years ago in that flooded motel basement, just before he found the boy tied to a pipe. Not now, she thought. Not here. Please, no. But Bruno had never been wrong. And as the truck's engine hummed low and the driver's smile froze, Lena's world narrowed to one terrifying possibility. There were children inside that truck. She placed a hand on Bruno's head. "Go," she whispered. And with that, they moved together toward whatever truth hid behind the pastel paint and cheerful jingle. The driver leaned casually against the frame of the service window, one elbow propped beside a faded menu of prices that hadn't changed in a decade. His name tag still said Buddy, but Lena could tell he hadn't answered to that name in a long time. "Just trying to spread a little joy," he called, his voice syrupy and slow. "Hot day like this, these kids need something sweet." Bruno didn't agree. The German Shepherd's bark had shifted into something Lena hadn't heard. Since their academy days, a snarl full of warning, not fear. He was no longer reacting. He was targeting. Lena approached the truck cautiously, one hand on her belt, the other gripping Bruno's leash. Her eyes moved, fast and trained. The rust ring on the back bumper, the smeared, smiley-face decal with its cracked outline, the subtle shaking in the man's free hand. "Sir," she said evenly, stopping 10 feet from the rear doors, "I need you to open the back of your vehicle." The man blinked, cocking his head. "Back? Why?" Lena didn't blink. "Because my dog thinks something's back there, and he doesn't get paid to be wrong." Bruno lunged again, this time nearly dragging her off balance. His paws scratched against the hot asphalt, tail rigid, ears back. It wasn't noise, it was purpose. He had locked onto something. The driver's expression stiffened for a split second. Not long, just long enough. Then he smiled again, a practiced crease that didn't touch his eyes. "I've got freezers back there. It's just popsicles. Dry ice. You know how it is. Nothing dangerous. Want one?" Lena took one step forward, voice lowering. "Open. The doors." A flicker. Barely visible, but there it was. Panic. He adjusted his apron, but his fingers were already inching toward the driver's seat through the service window. Bruno barked furiously. Lena shouted, "Don't you dare!" But it was too late. The truck lurched forward with a loud mechanical cough, spitting gravel behind its back tires as it tore away from the curb, straight through the field of picnic blankets and folding chairs. Kids scattered. Someone screamed. A plastic cone fell, crushed beneath a tire. Rocket popsicles tumbled from the side tray, left melting in the wake of rubber and dust. "Fox Hollow Unit 12-inch pursuit." Lena barked into her shoulder radio, already sprinting back toward the cruiser. "Ice cream truck fleeing Redfern Park. Suspect ignored direct command. K9 activated. License plate 4 Kilo 9 William 23. Bruno was already airborne, leaping into the back seat before she finished opening the door. His entire body vibrated with urgency. This wasn't a chase for him. This was a rescue. Lena slammed the gearshift into drive and floored the pedal. The tires screeched, catching too late on the gravel path before launching them down Millstone. Up ahead, the truck veered wildly onto the main road, its turn signal still blinking from the wrong side. "What the hell are you running from?" Lena whispered to herself, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Bruno paced behind the partition, pressing his nose against the narrow space between mesh and window. His breathing was quick, short. He let out a sound she hadn't heard since Hurricane Lethe, a soft, wounded whine, like grief trying to push its way out of his throat. Whatever was in that truck, he already knew it hurt. Lena hit the lights. The siren screamed. Up ahead, the driver made a sharp right onto Pine Hollow Avenue, clipping a mailbox and nearly taking out a lawn chair where a woman had been reading. She dove just in time. A few feet further, the truck began to fishtail. The rear tires weren't built for speed, they were buckling under the weight. "Come on," Lena muttered. "Keep going. Make a mistake." He did. At the end of Pine Hollow was a cul-de-sac with one way out. The truck plowed forward anyway, swerving past a garden hose and through someone's hedge. But at the far end stood a metal guardrail, one that overlooked a cracked basketball court below. The truck slammed into the barrier, metal shrieking on impact, the front bumper wedged between two steel beams. The vehicle stopped. Steam hissed from the engine. Lena was out of the cruiser in seconds, Bruno by her side. "Step out of the vehicle," she shouted, weapon drawn, hands visible. The driver didn't argue this time. He stumbled out, apron askew, sweat pouring down his temples. His hands shook as he raised them. "I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't do anything." On the ground. Now. He dropped. She cuffed him quick, knees to gravel. Bruno standing over them both, tail still, gaze fixed on the truck. But Lena's attention had already shifted. The heat from the engine was nothing compared to the cold she felt when she reached the rear of the truck. She took a slow breath, pressed her palm against the latch. The metal was scalding. She yanked the door open. At first darkness, then the scent. Sweat, duct tape, cold metal, and something else. Fear. Lena stepped up into the compartment. The trays meant to hold ice cream were empty, pushed to the sides. In their place, a sliding panel, a freezer-style wall with no visible lock. "Bruno," she called softly. He whined once and leapt in behind her. She pulled at the latch. The panel gave way. Behind it, barely visible in the dim light, were two small shapes crumpled, unmoving. Lena's heart seized. Bruno crawled forward on his belly, licking a tiny hand with slow, careful strokes. The fingers twitched. Alive. Lena dropped to her knees, pulled out her knife, cut through the binding tape. One child, a girl, maybe 7, collapsed into her arms, shaking. The other, a boy, pale and slick with sweat, let out a weak breath. She held them both, voice breaking into the radio mic. 2 children, alive, EMS, now. Outside, the world was moving again, sirens, voices, the sound of backup arriving. But in the back of that truck, time stood still. And for one quiet moment, it was just a cop, her dog, and 2 children who would live to see another day because one German shepherd refused to stop barking. The world stilled in the moment after impact. The smell of burnt rubber hung in the summer air, mixing with cut grass and something far more acrid fear. Lena realized, had a scent. The ice cream truck sat crooked, its bumper twisted against the guardrail above the old basketball court. Its pastel colors now flaked and streaked with dust, like a clown's mask peeled off under interrogation. Lena stood motionless for a second beside her cruiser, chest rising and falling too fast, gun still drawn, Bruno tense beside her. She hadn't shouted back up into the radio yet, hadn't moved to read the driver his rights. All she could see were Bruno's eyes fixed, unblinking on the back doors of the truck. "Stay," she whispered to him. He didn't move, but his tail swept the gravel once. She approached the driver slowly, weapon still trained, the adrenaline in her blood making her hands shake even as her voice stayed level. "On your stomach, hands behind your head." The man, a blur of apron strings and denim, complied too easily. No shouting, no begging, just silence and a flicker of something Lena couldn't name. Resignation, maybe, or worse, relief. She cuffed him fast, pressing his wrists behind his back with more force than necessary. "You're under arrest," she said flatly. "You'll speak when we get to the station." His mouth opened, but no sound came. No denial, No defense. Just a long, broken exhale. Bruno let out a low whimper, urgent and sharp. Lena stood. Now came the part she didn't want to do but had to. She turned to the back of the truck. The jingle still played, faint and warped, skipping every fourth note. Do your ears, do your ears, do your... And then it started over. Her hand hovered over the latch like it was something sacred. She pulled. The metal groaned. The door swung open. Darkness. A blast of cold air. Then, shapes. Not boxes. Not freezers. Bodies. 2 small children, huddled together, gagged, wrists bound, duct tape slack with sweat but still in place. Their cheeks were flushed with heat and panic. Their eyes were barely open. The girl, maybe 7, her dress torn at the shoulder, twitched once. The boy didn't move. Lena's breath caught in her throat. For a second, all sound vanished. The sirens, the chatter on the radio, even Bruno's panting. It was just the 3 of them. 2 tiny strangers whose lives had hung on the edge of a German shepherd's bark. She climbed into the truck, her boots thudding against the cold metal floor. "EMS, this is Unit 1-2. 2 miners recovered. Alive but unconscious. Need paramedics immediately. Location: West End Court, Fox Hollow. I repeat, 2 miners. Unresponsive." Bruno jumped up behind her, ignoring the cold, ignoring the confined space. He approached slowly, one paw after the other, ears low. He sniffed. Then, gently, so gently it nearly broke her, he licked the boy's hand. The fingers twitched. Bruno whined and lowered his head until his nose touched the boy's arm. Not in alarm, in reassurance. Like he was saying, "You're safe now." Lena's throat tightened. She cut through the tape with her utility knife, hand steady now despite the storm behind her ribs. The tape fell away from the girl's face first. Her lashes fluttered. She whimpered a sound that would stay lodged in Lena's chest forever. "You're okay," Lena whispered. "We've got you. I promise." The girl collapsed into her arms. The boy stirred next, coughing weakly. He reached for something, anything, fingers grasping air. Bruno nudged his hand again, pressing his body close to the child's side. The boy's fingers curled around Bruno's ear like a lifeline. It was. Outside, sirens finally cut through the fog. Red and blue lights danced across the aluminum siding of the truck, painting the inside in pulses of color that felt all wrong for such a tender, shattered space. A paramedic leaned in. "Oh, God," he breathed. Lena didn't respond. She was still cradling the girl, who had now buried her face into Lena's chest, clutching the fabric of her uniform with desperate, trembling fingers. The boy's eyes opened slightly. "Water," he croaked. They gave him oxygen first, then warm blankets, then soft voices. But what he didn't let go of, what neither of them would, was Bruno. As the paramedics lifted the children out on stretchers, the girl reached for Lena. "Don't leave." "I'm not," she whispered. "I'm right here." The boy clung to Bruno's harness as they wheeled him away. When a paramedic tried to unclip his hand, he began to cry, not loud, but broken, as if his body no longer knew how to weep, but his soul demanded it anyway. Lena gave a nod. "Let him hold on," she said. "Bruno stays with them." The officer beside her didn't question it. Neither did Bruno. He padded behind the gurney, silent as shadow. The scene outside the truck had changed now. Neighbors stood behind the police tape, some with hands over their mouths, some holding their own children a little tighter. The air, thick with heat minutes ago, now felt thin, like something sacred had been exhaled too fast and could never be taken back. Lena turned to the driver, still cuffed, now seated in the back of a squad car. He stared out the window, not blank, not shocked, just waiting. Like he knew this wasn't over, like he wasn't the only one. A junior officer approached. "What now?" Lena stared at the crumpled truck, its side painted with decals of animals licking frozen treats, smiling like everything inside had ever been sweet. Then she looked at the blood on her sleeve, the tape on the floor, Bruno, sitting now beside the ambulance, watching the road like it might bite back. She answered quietly, voice raw. "Now we find out how deep this goes." The hallway outside room 214 of Fox Hollow General smelled like bleach and overripe oranges. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered in one corner, giving the illusion of movement where none existed. Nurses passed in soft shoes, whispering updates, adjusting charts, not meeting anyone's eyes for too long. Inside, the room was too still. Lena stood just beyond the threshold, arms crossed over her uniform, gaze fixed on the tiny figure curled beneath a pale blue hospital blanket. Alina, age estimated to be 7, skin flushed but improving. Her fingers curled against the fabric like they were trying to disappear into it. She hadn't spoken much, not to the doctors, not to the nurses, not to anyone, until Bruno entered. The German shepherd sat calmly near the foot of the bed. Head tilted, ears relaxed. His body was still, but his eyes stayed on Alina's. He didn't move closer. He didn't need to. She opened her eyes. "Can he stay?" she whispered. Lena stepped in. "As long as you'd like." The girl nodded, almost invisible. A nurse glanced at Lena, murmured, "5 minutes," then slipped out of the room. Lena approached the chair beside the bed but didn't sit. Not yet. She waited, watched. Bruno gave a quiet exhale and laid his head on the edge of the mattress. Alina's hand reached out, rested gently on his fur, and for a full 30 seconds, neither moved. Then just above a breath, she spoke. "There was a lady. Smelled like lemons." Lena didn't react outwardly, but her heart surged. "She always wore gloves," the girl added, her voice dry as dust. "She told me not to cry or they'd take the music away." "What music?" Lena asked, her tone soft. "Not cop. Soft human. Soft." Alina blinked up at the ceiling. From above, the ceiling made the music. Like a box. It played when it was time to be quiet. "Do you remember where you were?" Alina's head moved slightly side to side. "Dark. No windows. Sometimes a door." Bruno nudged her hand. She let out the smallest laugh, a sound so fragile it could have been mistaken for breath-catching. Then she whispered something that chilled Lena to the bone. "They said we were numbers." Lena crouched beside the bed. "Who said that?" Alina's lips pressed tight. "They called me 4-7. Not my name. M." A silence fell heavy between them, the kind that suffocates not because of what's said, but what hangs behind it. Lena finally asked, "Do you remember anyone else?" The girl's brow furrowed. "There was a boy, he didn't talk much." Lena nodded. "Jonah." Alina's eyes flickered. "He never cried, not even when they took his shoes." Lena stood. "He's here too, just down the hall." Alina's voice dropped again. "Is he with the dog?" Lena managed to smile. "Not yet, but he's asking for him." Room 216 was quieter, dimmer. No cartoons on the television, just the steady beep of a heart monitor and the faint rustle of sheets. Jonah sat propped up against pillows, knees hugged to his chest. His arms were skinny, skin bruised in patches. His hair stuck up in stubborn tufts. He stared at the window, not through it, but toward it, like it might eventually show him something he recognized. When Lena entered, he didn't blink. She stood near the bed, arms by her side. "I'm Officer Hart," she said gently. "I was the one who found you in the truck." No reaction. Bruno patted in behind her. Jonah's head snapped toward the door. His eyes, flat and tired, lit for the first time. "The dog," he whispered. Bruno sat, tail sweeping once across the floor. Jonah extended his hand slowly, then dropped it. "I want him again." Lena moved closer. "He's yours for as long as you need." Bruno moved before she could even motion. He rested his head against the side of Jonah's bed. The boy's fingers sank into the fur with practiced familiarity, like it was something he'd done 1,000 times in dreams. "He barked," Jonah murmured. "He did." "He didn't stop." Lena's throat tightened. "No, he didn't." There was silence, long and jagged. Then, "He knew I was in there." Lena pulled a chair up beside him. She didn't ask questions, didn't push. She just sat. Jonah looked down at his knees. "I wasn't supposed to speak, but I talked to the dog. That's okay. They said if we made noise, we wouldn't get fed." He blinked, slow. "But sometimes they forgot anyway." A nurse stepped in briefly, saw Bruno, and simply nodded. No one questioned the dog anymore. Jonah turned to Lena. "They had a book with pictures, kids in it, like picking." Lena's heart thudded once, hard. "Did they show it to you?" Jonah nodded. "Did you see someone get picked?" The boy's eyes darkened. The red-haired girl. She had a gap in her teeth. Lena's blood ran cold. That matched a missing child alert. Ava Callahan, 6 years old. Reported from Kansas. Last seen in a party dress and sandals. Gone 4 days. She didn't come back, Jonah said softly. Lena stood slowly. I need to follow up on a few things. But Bruno can stay. Jonah didn't let go. He whispered into Bruno's ear, and while Lena couldn't hear the words, she saw the way the boy's shoulders dropped just slightly, as if something inside him had uncoiled for the first time in days. As Lena stepped into the hallway, the nurse looked up from her chart. Alina's breathing easier, she said. Good, Lena replied. Then after a pause, how many kids come through this floor each year from things like this? The nurse's expression flattened. Too many. Lena nodded once, then walked toward the elevator, heart pounding with fury dressed in grief. Because now she knew something she hadn't wanted to believe before. This wasn't a one-off. This was a system, and they were just scratching the surface. The tow yard smelled like scorched rubber and rusted regret. By the time Lena arrived, the ice cream truck had been hauled from the crash site and placed under a faded blue tarp behind the chain-link fence at Fox Hollow Vehicle Impound. The pastel paint, once bright and whimsical, now looked brittle in the late afternoon sun, like the skin of something pretending to be harmless. The decal still smiled. That stupid cartoon duck holding a popsicle. Its grin cracked through the dust and dried pollen. A child's dream built into a predator's shell. Lena crossed the lot, badge clipped to her vest, heat rising in waves from the concrete. Bruno padded beside her, his gait alert but smooth. He hadn't made a sound all morning, but his nose hadn't stopped twitching. 2 forensics techs were already there, dressed in charcoal polos and latex gloves, cataloging every piece of evidence as if it could testify on its own. You Hart? One of them asked, not looking up from the open driver's side door. Yeah, we pulled about 15 items already, he muttered. But the most interesting one wasn't in the glove compartment. It was taped under the driver's seat. He held up a cheap, cracked Android phone inside an evidence bag. Lena leaned in. Locked? Barely. No passcode. Either lazy or cocky. What's on it? He nodded to his partner, who was scrolling through mirrored files on a laptop. She looked up, her face pale. There are photos, she said quietly. Dozens of them. All kids. Not from the hospital. Some look like school portraits. Some look recent candid shots from parks, bus stops, outside playgrounds. Lena's jaw tightened. Timestamps? Mixed. Some go back months, but there's a pattern. The technician turned the laptop toward her. On screen, a photo of a boy 10, maybe 11, gripping a juice box, standing just outside a chain-link schoolyard. His smile wasn't forced. It wasn't sad. It was normal, and somehow, that made it worse. What's the location tag? Lena asked. The tech clicked. Prescott, Missouri, 4 hours north. She scrolled again. A girl on monkey bars, another boy in a school hallway. Each image had embedded data dates, rough GPS pins, and then the repetition. A single GPS coordinate showed up 5 times. Lena's eyes narrowed. What's that one? The technician tapped her screen. Same place? Same photo studio? Name? Parkside Memories. It shut down. Officially closed last year after a tax audit, but someone's still paying the utility bill. Lena stared at the address. 32 Redwood Lane, Martridge. That's 40 minutes from here. Aye? The forensic tech added. We also found zip ties under the floor panel. Same brand as the ones used on the kids. Quantity suggests bulk purchase. And he pulled out a second bag. Inside, an envelope empty but for a laminated vendor license that read Sweet Wheels Ice Cream Company. Lena took it. The license number was fake. The signature B.C. Ranford was barely legible. Cross, check this name with any other known drivers, she said. The woman at the laptop hesitated. Ma'am, what? She turned the screen again. Another photo, another child. But this one was blurry, almost as if taken in motion. In the background, just behind a chain-link fence, a shape hovered broad-shouldered, square posture holding a clipboard. It was him again, the man from the body cam footage, the one who always appeared just before something bad happened and disappeared just before anyone arrived. No face, no ID, just a silhouette and a pattern of timing too perfect to be coincidence. Lena stared hard at the image, the shadow of a predator standing where children played. How many times has this figure shown up? 3 images, the technician replied. Different parks, same posture, always near the edge of the frame. Bruno gave a low, almost inaudible growl. Lena didn't need to look at him to know he recognized it too. This isn't about one truck, she said quietly. Or one driver. The technician swallowed. It's bigger, isn't it? Much. She stepped back from the laptop, pulling her phone from her vest. Dialed the captain. When he picked up, she didn't waste time. I need surveillance authorization on an abandoned business. Martridge, Parkside Memories. Possible active location tied to interstate child trafficking. Lena. I have GPS logs, images, and a pattern. There was a pause on the other end. Who else knows? Just us and forensics. Good. Keep it tight. I'll put in the request and meet you there in 1 hour. Bring a team. Already on it. She hung up. Bruno sat beside her now, watching the rust fade slowly from the truck's bumper under the sun. You were right again, she said quietly. They smiled at us while they were hunting kids. She knelt, running her hand down his back. Slow, grounding. We're going to stop them. One name, one face, one shadow at a time. Bruno licked her knuckles. She stood and looked back one last time at the truck, now nothing more than evidence in a growing case file. The decals still peeled under the heat, but the message they had hidden beneath their candy-colored lies was now burned into her memory. Not everything that smiles is safe. The interrogation room at the Fox Hollow precinct was the kind of space designed to look neutral gray walls, bolted table, one steel chair too cold in winter, too hard in summer. But nothing in the room ever felt neutral once someone sat across from Lena Hart. Especially not him. Brett Cranford, age 52. No criminal record. No outstanding warrants. No flagged aliases. Just a man who, on paper, looked like he'd been paying taxes, taking vitamins, and living a quiet life for the past 3 decades. But there were 2 children in a hospital bed who knew better. And so did Bruno. The dog sat beside Lena now, silent but awake, ears alert. Across from them, Brett shifted in his chair. The overhead light buzzed, faintly. He hadn't asked for a lawyer. Hadn't said much at all, not since they pulled him from the squad car and walked him down the hall with a coat over his wrists to keep the press from getting a clean shot. He just looked tired. Like a man who'd been running too long and was finally cornered by something with teeth. Lena broke the silence. We found the zip ties, the vendor permit, the phone. No reaction. She placed the laminated license on the table. Its corners were bent. The name still read, Sweet Wheels Ice Cream Company. Brett Cranford, vendor number 45,632. That's not real, she said, but you already knew that. Brett blinked slowly, mouth closed. Lena leaned forward. The children, Alina and Jonah. They were drugged, gagged, stuffed behind a fake freezer wall, like they were leftovers. His jaw flexed. Bruno let out a low exhale, not a growl, not a whine. Just a reminder, a presence, something watching. They're alive because he barked, Lena said, nodding toward the dog, and because I listened. Finally, Brett spoke. His voice was rough, paper thin. I didn't hurt them. No, Lena agreed. But you drove them. That makes you the link. The rope, not the knife. His eyes twitched. I didn't want to know. She tilted her head. Then why did you run? He stared down at his hands. Because I knew enough to know I shouldn't be caught. The words hung in the air like ash. Lena slid a photo across the table. A blurry screenshot from the phone, one of the park surveillance images. In the corner, half obscured by fencing, the figure with the clipboard. Who is this? Brett didn't even look. I don't know his name. We're not supposed to ask names. Lena waited. He swallowed. We get a schedule, a burner phone, pickups, drop-offs, instructions. We don't see faces, only times. If we ask questions, we're out. Out of what? He looked up. For the first time, she saw it. Fear, Not fear of punishment, not guilt. Fear of something much bigger than police badges or holding cells. The network, he said quietly. They're everywhere. Lena's fingers curled slightly on the table. Define everywhere. Trucks, vans, park benches, rest stops, schools, sometimes airports. They use rental cars, change plates, swap uniforms. He exhaled slowly, like he was bleeding out the truth. People think monsters look like monsters. They don't. They wear aprons, hold popsicles. They smile, too wide. That's how they get close. Lena didn't blink. How long have you been part of it? His voice cracked. 11 months. Why'd you say yes? He hesitated. My wife died 2 years ago. Cancer. I couldn't work. I got behind on everything. One day, this guy shows up at my doorstep, said I could make easy cash, drive a truck, no sales, no real customers, just pre-scheduled routes. All I had to do was look the part and keep my mouth shut. He stared at the table. I didn't know. Not at first. The first few runs were clean. Popsicles, balloons, regular kids, regular parents. But eventually, they handed me a cooler that wasn't cold, told me not to open it. And I knew. He choked. I knew. But I needed the money. And I told myself, if I don't see it, it's not real. Bruno stood. Lena let him. The dog padded slowly to Brett's side. Saturday. Just sat. Brett stared at him. He knew, Brett whispered. Didn't he? Lena nodded. Before I did. He looked back at her. You don't understand. They're coordinated. Not like street gangs or Craigslist creeps. They have files, logistics. They run it like a business, a system. He shook his head. I'm not the only one. Lena's voice was low, controlled. How many? Dozens. Maybe more. Different states, different vehicles. Some only do pickups. Some do transfers. Some... He stopped, jaw trembling. Some just take pictures. Lena's heart hammered. She pulled out another image. Parkside memories. The recurring GPS location. The closed-down photo studio. Have you been here? He flinched. I've dropped off packages in that alley. Never went inside. Wasn't allowed. What kind of packages? He didn't answer. Lena stared at him for a long moment, then stood. You're going away for a long time, Brett, but you still have one choice. Help us dismantle this or rot alone while they keep smiling in new neighborhoods. He didn't speak, but the silence between them shifted less defiant, more hollow. Lena turned to Bruno. Let's go. As she opened the door, Brett called out. They watch the news, he said softly. If I talk, they'll know. They already know, Lena replied, her voice steady. They're just waiting to see if we do too. She walked out. Bruno followed. And somewhere between that steel chair and the hallway beyond, Lena realized something with complete, soul-chilling clarity. This wasn't a fluke. It was a machine, and they had only just found its first loose bolt. Parkside Memories looked abandoned to the untrained eye. Its windows were dusty, its paint chipped. A faded, closed for renovation sign still clung to the glass door with weathered tape. The building sat at the corner of a quiet block in Martridge, its back alley hidden beneath rusting fire escapes and overgrown ivy. But Lena had seen places like this before, buildings that wore neglect like camouflage. You didn't have to scream to hide monsters. You just had to look like nobody cared anymore. Bruno sniffed the concrete in tight circles, his tail stiff, nose dragging the ground with every step. Lena moved beside him, checking her corners, hand on her holster. The alley was narrow, just wide enough for a delivery van and a bad intention. Bruno stopped. He lifted his head slowly. Low growl, no bark. Lena followed his gaze. Side door, recently used. The rust around the lock had been scratched clean. A boot scuff on the bottom panel. The faintest whiff of latex and lemon cleaner floated out from the frame. She knocked once. Silence. Then muffled movement. She drew her weapon. Police. Open the door. No answer. Bruno's body tensed like a drawn bowstring. Lena kicked the door open. It didn't splinter. It buckled inward with a clang, revealing a hallway lined with peeling wallpaper and frayed carpet that reeked of mildew and artificial vanilla. But at the end of the hall, behind a thin curtain, she heard it, the click of a camera. She moved fast. Bruno, faster. through the curtain into a wide-open room that had no business being there. Bright studio lights bathed the walls in harsh fluorescence. A backdrop of cartoon animals stretched behind a white bench lined with fake grass. Balloon arches framed the scene like it was someone's birthday, but there were no presents, no cake. Only a little girl, 6, maybe 7, posed stiffly with a stuffed rabbit in her lap. Her hair was tied in neat braids. Her eyes were empty. The man behind the camera gave a thumbs up. "Smile for the bunny," he said softly. He never saw Bruno coming. The shepherd lunged forward with speed that defied sound, teeth bared, claws clicking on laminate. Lena shouted, "Down! Hands where I can see them!" The photographer barely had time to turn before Bruno's full weight slammed into him, knocking the camera flying. It shattered against the floor. The man hit the wall hard, gasping, pinned. Bruno stood over him, unmoving, teeth inches from his throat. The girl didn't scream. She just blinked slowly. Like this wasn't the first time. Lena holstered her weapon and rushed to her. "You're safe now," she whispered, untying the ribbon around the girl's wrist. The ribbon hadn't matched the outfit. It had matched the other props. A detail meant for someone else's eyes. Lena took the girl's hand and led her gently to a corner, away from the chaos. The girl gripped her stuffed rabbit tighter, but didn't cry. She sat, small, folded. Lena turned back. The man was whimpering now, breathless. "I didn't touch her. I just took the pictures. That's all I did. I didn't touch her." Lena crouched beside him. "What were the pictures for?" He shook his head. "They send me the themes. I don't pick the kids. I don't deliver them. I just pose them. I get paid in crypto. I don't know who runs it, I swear." She cut him off. "You don't pose children like that by accident." She stood, looked around. The props weren't random. Plastic tiaras, fuzzy bunny suits, a tiny white dress with embroidered doves. In one corner, a rack full of toddler-sized costumes. Firefighter, doctor, princess. A customer could choose the story. Bruno growled again, but not at the man this time. Toward the far wall. A narrow door, half hidden behind stacked foam boards. Lena opened it. Inside, a smaller room, dim, no windows, no soundproofing, but the walls were covered in thick black cloth. On a desk, 2 open laptops, screens still glowing. One showed live chat windows. Buyers, usernames masked, requesting different themes, different props, different poses. The other showed thumbnails, children, recent photos. The girl from the white bench, 3 different outfits, all taken today. Lena's hand shook, just once, before she reached for the hard drive stacked beneath the desk. Bruno stood in the doorway like a statue. Lena bagged the laptops, then turned back toward the main room. The girl was sitting still. Her feet didn't touch the floor. Lena knelt again. "Do you remember your name?" The girl hesitated. "Jada." Lena smiled softly. "That's a beautiful name." Jada didn't smile back. Lena offered her hand. "Let's go home, Jada." Bruno walked beside them as they exited, his head low but steady, never once taking his eyes off the hallway behind them. Outside, the street still looked ordinary. A breeze blew past. Somewhere, a car radio played a country song about second chances. But Lena didn't believe in second chances anymore. Not for men like the one they'd just left in cuffs. And not for the system that let this place run while neighbors walked by for months, maybe years, thinking it was just another bankrupt wedding studio. Because behind those balloon arches and that fake grass-benched children had been turned into product photos. By the time Lena stepped into the makeshift war room, the walls had begun to close in. Not physically, emotionally. It was just a conference space inside the precinct. Walls once beige, now swallowed in pinboards and string. But after what they found at Parkside Memories, this room no longer held strategy or order. It held evidence of betrayal, of trust, of safety, of childhood. Photos. Everywhere. 32 faces, printed in color, pinned in rows on corkboard like a school yearbook made by wolves. Each picture had a number, not a name. Each one came with 3 columns scribbled in red Sharpie. Scouted vertical bar, retrieved vertical bar delivered. Some had all 3 circled, some only the first. A few were crossed out completely. Lena stood at the center of the room, arms limp at her sides. The silence pressing into her, like a second uniform. Captain Alvarez stood nearby, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight the muscle twitched beneath his ear. "This is bigger than we thought." Lena didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes landed on a photo pinned near the center, one she didn't remember authorizing. A boy, brown hair, messy, smiling nervously into the camera, a juice box in one hand, his shoes mismatched. Jonah. But not now. Not the boy in the hospital bed who clutched Bruno like an anchor. This was before. Before the tape. Before the truck. Before the silence. Someone had taken this picture of him in the wild before he was ever a victim. Lena felt the world shift beneath her. Her throat closed. "How many of these are current?" she finally asked. Alvarez glanced at the tech team in the corner. One woman stood at a whiteboard filled with printed location data. 17, she said. "Confirmed active status. Of those, 4 are in our state. The rest are spread across 4 others." "Who's matching them?" Lena asked. "We've looped in missing persons and DHS, Amber Alerts, school enrollment databases, every channel we can. And the other pictures? We don't know yet." Lena stepped forward, scanning the columns. One girl blonde, missing tooth, pink hoodie. Her status read, "Retrieved." The delivery box was blank. "She's somewhere in transit," Lena murmured. Alvarez didn't reply. On another board were props cataloged from the studio. Catalog tags, laminated cards like costume labels, Princess 4, Farmer 2, Bunny 3. Each one matched a known photo set. Someone had systematized childhood, built an inventory. Lena's hand curled into a fist. "They were running a marketplace," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "A literal order and fulfillment chain, posing kids, logging them, tracking distribution. Like a supply line," Alvarez said quietly. Lena turned to the laptop open on the table. The screen displayed a spreadsheet recovered from one of the seized hard drives' names replaced with ID strings. It tracked everything: date of entry, costume request, delivery method, drop locations coded, notes in cold language. One line read, "ID, 470, 3 Jewel, energetic, likes rabbits, plays piano, strong eye contact, delivered 704, verified." Another, "ID, 215 Kelvin, withdrawn, uncooperative, may require sedation, retrieved, pending delivery." Lena felt her stomach twist. "I want every one of these ID strings cross-matched with school photos, medical records, anything. If they gave a description, there's a name behind it." A voice spoke behind her, Detective Hanlon, holding a fresh folder. "We might have one." He handed her the photo from the earlier raid. The girl with the stuffed rabbit, the one from the bench. "She's listed here." He pointed to a line on the spreadsheet. ID, 521 Farad. Theme, Easter joy. Notes, quiet, compliant, available Thursdays. Lena looked at the board again. The photo of the same girl posed. Artificial smile, balloons at her back. But behind her eyes was the truth. She knew this wasn't the first camera, or the last. "Her name is Jada," Lena said. She said it herself. Yeah, Hanlon said, voice low. "We called the number from the missing flyer. Albany PD confirmed it. Parents have been searching for 4 days." Lena looked at Bruno, who had been sitting silently by the door, eyes tracking her every move. He stood now, moved to her side. She didn't say anything, just lowered her hand, brushing her fingers through his fur. He leaned into her touch. "We're going to break this thing," she whispered. Then she turned to the wall, back to the grid of children, of tiny smiles and tinsel crowns and props that should have meant birthdays, not auctions. Jonah's photo still sat in the center. Lena unclipped it, held it in her hand. A boy who asked for nothing, except the dog. In the quiet that followed, Bruno let out a soft exhale, his eyes flicking to the window as if he could see through the brick walls back to a truck, a bench, a freezer panel that almost kept 2 children from breathing again. Lena stood straighter. "This isn't a board," she said. "It's a battleground." She pinned Jonah's photo back on the wall, not under scouted, not under retrieved, not even delivered. She pinned it above them all, proof that the system could be broken, one child at a time. The crayons on the hospital tray were worn down to their stubs. Jonah sat cross-legged on the bed, tongue poking out in concentration, carefully dragging the red crayon across the paper in wide, looping strokes. Lena sat beside him, not as a cop this time, but something gentler, something that didn't require a badge. Bruno lay on the floor near Jonah's feet, tail thumping every so often in quiet rhythm, like he was listening to a story that only the boy could tell. Jonah didn't speak much. Most days, he didn't speak at all, but he drew, and sometimes the drawing said enough. Today, he drew a girl. She had bright red hair, too red to be real, and a gap in her smile. One front tooth missing, the other one too big for her face. Her dress was yellow, with a crooked flower. The sky behind her was blue, but her eyes, Jonah had colored them gray, and then scratched them out with his fingernail. Lena leaned closer. "Who's that, buddy?" she asked gently. Jonah didn't look up, just whispered, "Ava." Lena blinked. "Is she your friend?" He nodded. His crayon dropped to the floor, forgotten. She was in the truck first. Then they said it was her turn to go on the plane. Lena's heart stilled. "A plane?" Jonah nodded again, slower this time. "They said she'd get a stuffed rabbit if she was brave, but she didn't come back after." He looked at Lena now, his voice as soft as breath. "She was scared. She held my hand." A silence wrapped the room, thicker than before. Lena picked up the drawing, turning it over. No signature, just a child's memory, frozen in wax and paper. She stood and stepped into the hallway, her fingers already dialing. Within 5 minutes, Alvarez answered. "We might have a lead," she said. "Girl named Ava, red hair, about 6 or 7, missing front tooth. Jonah says she was taken on a plane." "That's specific," Alvarez replied. "You think it's real?" His eyes say it is. 30 minutes later, Lena was staring at a missing child flyer from Monroe County. Ava Callahan, age 6. Reported missing 4 days before the bust on the ice cream truck. Last seen at a playground. Red hair, yellow dress. Lena stared at the picture. It was her. A tighter braid, a bigger smile, but still her. Jonah had drawn her perfectly, down to the crooked flower on the dress. "They took her first," Lena whispered. "That truck made at least one more stop before we caught it. They rotated the kids." Behind her, Bruno let out a low whine, like he understood, like he already knew. Lena moved back into the hospital room, flyer in hand. She sat beside Jonah again and laid the photo on the tray. "Is this her?" Jonah nodded once, then didn't move. "She was nice," he whispered. "She said we'd play with her cat when we got home." Lena reached across the tray and took his small hand in hers. "We're going to find her," she said softly. But even as the words left her lips, she wasn't sure they were true. Later that night, back at the precinct, the team gathered around the wall of victims. Ava's picture was now pinned beside Jonah's, only this time there was no check mark, no rescued, just a name, a date, a space that held too much silence. Detective Hanlon stared at the GPS logs. There's a private airstrip just outside Monroe County. Unregulated, mostly crop dusters and hobby flights. No security footage, but logs show a plane took off the night Ava disappeared. No manifest filed. "And where did it go?" Lena asked. He shook his head. "Didn't register with FAA. Could have gone anywhere within a few 100 miles. It's a ghost plane." Lena ran a hand through her hair. "How the hell do you trace a child taken by air?" "You don't," Alvarez said quietly. "Not unless they land somewhere willing to report it." Lena's eyes flicked to Ava's drawing. Again, Jonah's drawing, really. A child clinging to another child, both trying to survive something too large for their words. She stood, grabbed her keys. "I'm going to her house." Hanlon blinked. "Now?" "Yes." The Callahan home sat at the edge of a small neighborhood lined with porch swings and picket fences, the kind of place where Halloween decorations still lingered in July. A woman opened the door, mid-32nd, dark under-eye circles, hands trembling. "Mrs. Callahan?" Lena said gently. The woman nodded. She looked past Lena, maybe hoping Ava would be there. I have a few questions. About Ava. I think she's not dead," the mother said suddenly. "I can feel it. I know." Lena didn't argue. She couldn't. Instead, she stepped inside, and handed her the drawing. Mrs. Callahan pressed it to her chest like a lifeline. "She made that dress," she whispered. "I helped her glue that flower on. She wore it every Thursday." Tears filled her eyes. They said she wandered off, that maybe she fell. But that's not her. She's careful. She holds my hand at every crosswalk. Lena swallowed hard. "There's more than one of them," she said quietly. "And we think Ava was one of the first." Mrs. Callahan let out a sound part gasp, part sob. Then, "Find her, please." Lena nodded once, then knelt beside Bruno and whispered, "Let's go find the one who slipped away." It was past midnight when Lena clicked the play button again. The precinct's overhead lights were off, save for one dim desk lamp that cast long shadows across the file-strewn room. Bruno lay curled beneath the desk, his breathing slow and steady, one ear tilted in Lena's direction, as if keeping watch even in sleep. She hadn't spoken in hours. The only sounds were the soft whirring of the laptop fan and the occasional creak of the building settling into the night. But Lena was wide awake. The screen glowed in front of her. Body cam footage. Scene after scene. Different days, different streets. Same sinking feeling in her chest. She scrubbed back to the beginning again. This time, she slowed the playback to half speed. The footage from the Prescott Elementary intercept flickered. Kids playing. Sunlight bouncing off metal jungle gyms. And there, just past the tree line, was the figure again. Lena froze the frame. A person, slender build, neutral clothes, clipboard in hand, face turned just out of view. The moment lasted half a second, maybe less, but they were there. She clicked forward. Another scene, the ice cream truck crash. People running, sirens blaring. Bruno barking in short, frantic bursts as he circled the back of the vehicle. And there it was again. Same figure, same clipboard, walking away from the chaos, not toward it, almost casual, like an office worker leaving early on a Friday afternoon. "Who the hell are you?" Lena muttered. She pulled up a third body cam feed, this one from the rest stop raid. The footage was shaky, running. Her breath from that day echoed through the audio. A sharp command, the sound of boots on gravel, the crash of the false wall. And behind it all, on the far side of the parking lot, barely in frame, the figure again. Same clothes, same stride, same damn clipboard. But never the face. Never close enough to stop. Never close enough to confront. Lena sat back in her chair, rubbing her temple. 3 sights, 3 appearances. No camera ever catching more than a glimpse. She opened the facial recognition software, uploaded the screenshots, every still frame she could extract. The AI tried, failed. No match found. Another search, clothing stores, security databases, nothing. The clipboard, plain, generic. The figure had scrubbed every fingerprint, literal or digital. But they hadn't anticipated Bruno. She clicked on one final video, her patrol dashcam from the park. The very first day, before anything unraveled. Children laughing. The familiar jingle of the ice cream truck in the distance. And there, barely a flicker, the figure again, this time sitting on a bench. Back turned, clipboard resting on their knees, watching, waiting. Then rising just before Bruno started barking. Bruno had sensed them. Not just the truck, not just the fear inside, but them. Lena looked down. The dog was still asleep, but his ears twitched. Dreaming, maybe, or remembering. She whispered, "You knew before any of us." Her phone buzzed. A text from Alvarez. "You're still in the office? Go home." Lena didn't reply. She took a photo of the screen and sent it back instead. "Recognize this person?" The reply came faster than expected. "Number. But that's not just random. Clipboard equals scout? Intake?" Another buzz. "This is big. If they're at every scene, they're not small fry." Lena nodded to herself, the wheels in her mind turning. Not small fry, not even middle management. This figure wasn't just watching, they were orchestrating. A surveyor, quality control, maybe even a handler. They had the confidence of someone untouchable, and the foresight of someone used to never being questioned. Bruno stirred as Lena opened her notebook. She wrote a single word across the top in capital letters. Ghost. Under it, she listed, *ice cream truck bust. appeared 2 minutes before first sirens. Asterisk photo studio raid walked out North Alley. Unnoticed. Asterisk. Rest stop parked 1 lot over. Left before perimeter sealed. Asterisk. Always holding clipboard. Asterisk. Neutral tones. Baseball cap. Black sneakers. Asterisk. Left-handed. Clipboard orientation. She stared at the word ghost. Not a nickname. A presence. A person who moved through the chaos like smoke. Who counted on the fact that no one ever looked away from the fire to see who'd lit the match? Until now. Lena stood slowly and walked to the wall of pinned evidence. Photos of victims, maps, string lines across cities. And now, she tacked up the grainy still shot of the figure beside Ava Callahan's missing persons flyer. "You were there," she whispered, "and I will find out why." Behind her, Bruno sat up, ears forward. She looked down and gave him a faint smile. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start hunting the one who watches." Bruno's tail swept the floor once. The park was empty almost. It was the kind of overcast morning where light filtered through clouds like a tired breath. Dew still clung to the grass, and the swings rocked gently even though no one had touched them. Bruno sniffed the air, nose twitching. Lena had followed him here after a sleepless night, guided by something less than a lead and more than a hunch. The footage, the figure, the sense that the ground was shifting under their feet, and they didn't even know where the cracks were. Bruno paused near the sandbox, his body suddenly stiff, ears pricked like radar. "What is it, boy?" Lena stepped off the walking path, her boots crunching on the gravel. Bruno growled, a low warning hum deep in his throat, not fear, not aggression, a pulse of instinct that said, "Something doesn't belong here." He began to dig, not wild, not aimless, precise, deliberate. Lena knelt beside him. Sand kicked up into the air, fine as powder, until something metallic caught the light, a glint beneath the surface. "Easy," she whispered. "Let me see." She brushed sand aside and pulled out a small black phone, thin and taped in plastic. No case, no markings, just a device that wasn't meant to be found. Her pulse quickened. She wrapped it in a cloth and slid it into a sealed bag from her back pocket. "Nice work," she said softly, scratching behind Bruno's ear. "Let's see who was watching the kids play." Back in the cruiser, Lena connected the phone to the field decryptor. It took 30 seconds to unlock. No texts, no calls, just one folder. Logs. She tapped into it. Last GPS entry. Location. Prescott Elementary. Time. 9:37 a.m. Current time. Ni at nay. Lena stared at the screen. Prescott Elementary. Again. This was the second time that school had come up. The first was during the intercept, when Bruno had stopped the female driver from pressing a remote. But this time? This time the timestamp was 20 minutes in the future. She tapped the dash. "Dispatch, this is Officer Lena Hart. I need backup en route to Prescott Elementary. Possible threat situation. ETA on scene 7 minutes. K-9 unit en route." "Copy that, Officer Hart. Proceed with caution." Lena hit the siren. Bruno was already standing, nose pressed to the window. As the cruiser pulled away, Lena's knuckles tightened around the wheel. A hidden phone. A planned drop. An exact timestamp. This wasn't random. This was scheduled. The route to the school cut through the edge of Fox Hollow's residential grid. Families with picket fences, chalk drawings on the driveways, wind chimes that sang when no one was listening. All unaware. Lena's mind raced. Who planted the phone? Was it the ghost? A scout? Or a handler checking delivery times? She glanced at the device again. The logs showed multiple drops, parks, rest stops, intersections near schools. And then one note, tucked into metadata. Delivery. Phase 2 ready. Female confirmed. Her breath caught. Another child? Or another driver? The roads blurred. Trees. Street signs. The old bakery with the chipped blue shutters. Then Prescott Elementary came into view. It looked like every school in every small town, low brick buildings. A flag fluttering out front, painted crosswalks with fading lines. But today, something felt off. A white van was parked just past the faculty lot. No decals, no plates. Not quite ice cream truck, but not quite right. Lena slowed. Bruno growled. She opened the door. "Stay," she whispered. On my word. Lena approached slowly, one hand near her belt. There was a faint hum from inside the van. Maybe a refrigeration unit. Maybe something else. No sound of kids, no bells, no music. She knocked on the side. No answer. Police. Open the door. Still nothing. She circled to the front. The driver's seat was empty. Door unlocked. Her hand brushed the handle, paused. Bruno's growl turned sharp. Urgent. That was all she needed. She opened the door. A woman stepped out from behind the van with a remote in her hand, pale face, lips pressed thin. No name tag, no badge. Just gloves. The kind used in surgeries. Bruno bolted from the cruiser like lightning. He leapt, hit her mid-torso. The remote fell, skittered across the pavement. The woman screamed once before Bruno pinned her, teeth bared but not biting. Holding, waiting. Lena cuffed her in seconds. You're done. The woman spat at her feet. You don't know anything. Lena looked into the back of the van. What she saw drained the blood from her face. No frozen treats, no dry ice. Just rows of labeled vials, tranquilizers. 4 canvas bags open, ready. Inside each, zip ties, black cloth masks, wipes soaked in something that smelled too strong, and a clipboard. Lena lifted it with gloved hands. No names, just codes, drop points, times, status. Scouted. She turned to Bruno, who now sat alert, but calm. He watched her as if asking, How many more, Lena? She didn't answer, because right now, all she could feel was the cold throb of rage. The second siren wasn't hers. It came from the south, slicing through the quiet morning like a razor over silk. Backup had arrived, but Lena didn't wait. She had eyes on the van, the woman, the remote that still gleamed like a thread in her hand. The woman didn't flinch at the sirens, didn't run, just looked up, expression blank, almost bored, as if this were another Wednesday in a long line of Wednesdays where no one ever came in time. Bruno didn't wait for a comment. He lunged. There was no bark, just motion, a blur of muscle and intent. The woman barely had time to raise the remote before Bruno slammed into her torso, knocking her back against the side of the van. The device flew from her hand, skittering across the asphalt like a pebble in the wind. Lena was there a breath later. Hands behind your head, now. The woman didn't resist, didn't speak, just smiled, tight-lipped and cold, as Bruno growled low, standing guard with his body poised like a loaded spring. Lena cuffed her swiftly, fingers steady even as her stomach churned. She'd seen this look before in people who had long since stopped seeing children as people. What's the button for? Lena asked. Even though she already knew, the woman said nothing. But her eyes, they flicked toward the van. Lena opened the back. What she saw would stay with her longer than the bruises or headlines. Canvas bags, 4 of them, open, each neatly packed with black cloth masks, thick rubber gloves, and industrial zip ties. Beneath that, vials arranged like samples in a lab, clear, amber, green-tinted. Handwritten labels, K, 12 dose. Fast sleep, 30 min only. No popsicles, no jingling bells, no sugar cones or fudge swirl. Just cold, clinical tools meant to erase a child from the world without leaving noise behind. Lena swallowed hard. Her hands moved on autopilot, photographing, tagging, documenting. Her voice over the radio remained level. This is Officer Hart. Suspect apprehended. Van secured. Scene contains chemical agents and restraint tools consistent with abduction protocols. Requesting hazmat sweep and child welfare units ASAP. Copy that. Units en route. Stand by. Bruno remained still at the woman's side, his chest heaving, his gaze never leaving her. Lena stepped back from the van and exhaled through clenched teeth. You were going to take them, she said quietly. In broad daylight, in front of God and everyone. Still no reply, just that maddening calm. It was the calm of someone who believed they'd be replaced if caught. A cog, not a mind. Behind her, the elementary school doors opened. The principal stood there, pale and confused, holding a clipboard. Officer Hart? What's going on? Lock down the school, no questions right now. Keep the kids inside and safe. He nodded, retreating quickly. Lena turned back to the woman. You work alone? The woman's lips curled slightly. No one does anymore. Then, almost thoughtfully, she added, "He said you'd come." Lena's blood ran cold. Who? But the woman fell silent again, as if her part was done, as if the script had ended. She was loaded into a cruiser moments later, head bowed, but not in shame, in control. Lena stood by the van's open back, staring at the contents like they might rearrange themselves into something less monstrous if she blinked hard enough. Bruno brushed against her side. She knelt and cupped his face. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew before I did." His eyes were steady, the kind of gaze that anchored, that held. Lena's radio crackled again. "Copy from HQ phone logs you submitted earlier. Show matching GPS signals between the phone in the sandbox and this van over the last 3 weeks. We're connecting the dots." She closed her eyes for a second, just long enough to feel the weight of it all. When she opened them, the wind had picked up. Leaves skittered across the lot. Somewhere beyond the chain-link fence, kids were laughing. Unaware of how close today had come to ending differently, Lena whispered, not to Bruno this time, but to herself. "Bark first, ask later." That's how he saves lives. The wind shifted as they left the main road, carrying the scent of pine and something older like rusted metal under wet leaves. The GPS tracker chirped once and then went silent. The blue dot blinked, paused on the map like it, too, was holding its breath. Lena killed the engine. The rest stop lay ahead in quiet decay. Its wooden sign faded, one letter hanging by a rusted nail. Scenic Trail Juncti. The O had long since fallen off, swallowed by dirt and time. She stepped out slowly. Bruno followed, his body taut, ears forward. The place looked forgotten. A picnic table with one leg missing. A collapsed vending shack with shattered glass like broken teeth. Ferns had grown through the cracks in the pavement. Nature reclaiming what man had abandoned, but GPS didn't lie. And instinct didn't, either. Bruno paused beside the concrete restroom building, its paint chipped. The women's sign almost unreadable. He sniffed once, then twice. His body stiffened. A low growl built in his throat. Not bark, not panic. Warning. Lena drew her sidearm and stepped closer. The humming came next. Faint, subtle, like a refrigerator's motor in the dead of night. Steady and unnatural in a place where nothing should have power. She pressed her hand against the wall, cold, solid. Then an echo. "Hear that?" she murmured. Bruno responded by pressing his body hard against a portion of the cinder block wall, just below the graffiti of a child's scribble. A stick figure holding a balloon, faint initials beneath it. Manuscript figure in splack. Lena crouched, ran her fingers along the seam where 2 bricks didn't quite meet. The air was cooler here. She knocked once. Hollow. Her pulse rose. A false wall. She stood up and stepped back, thumb pressing her comms. "Dispatch. This is Officer Hart. I'm at Scenic Trail Junction. Suspect, we found a concealed space, likely tied to ongoing investigation. Requesting immediate backup and drilling unit for breach. Advise ETA." "Copy, Officer Hart. Response team en route. ETA. 24 minutes. Proceed with caution." Lena exhaled and turned back to the wall. 24 minutes, she said to Bruno. "But whatever's back there, it's been waiting longer than that." She walked the perimeter while Bruno stayed anchored near the wall. No external wiring. No signs of camera mounts. Just stillness. A sort of curated silence, like the world was pretending not to look. She thought about the other scenes. The other lies dressed in pastel and sugar. The music from the ceiling. The fake freezer panel. The lemon-scented lady. Everywhere they went, evil dressed itself as innocence. And always, always, there was something beneath. Her phone buzzed. A text from Thor. Found similar pattern at Redding Grove. False wall. Waiting for breach. Could be a chain. Her stomach tightened. They weren't just finding outposts. They were finding infrastructure. Bruno let out a short, sharp bark. Lena turned, just in time to see his nose press to a barely visible crack at the bottom edge of the wall. The humming was louder now. She dropped to her knees beside him. "There's airflow," she whispered. Bruno pawed once at the base, then backed away. She leaned in, and then she heard it. Not just the hum. Voices. Faint, distant, muffled through the cement, but unmistakable. A child's whimper. A man's laugh. The shuffle of movement. Lena's vision narrowed. "We're not waiting 24 minutes, she whispered. She backed off and pulled the red flare from her side pouch. One sharp strike and it hissed to life, smoke curling upward in crimson warning. She tossed it beside the road, marking the spot for backup. Then she returned to the wall, knelt again, and whispered to Bruno, "Stay ready. We don't open this wall unless we're sure backup's behind us. But if they move them..." She didn't finish the sentence. Bruno didn't need it. He lay low, gaze locked, every muscle still except for the rise and fall of his breath. Time passed slowly, the kind that stretches minutes into something unbearable. The humming never stopped, neither did the muffled voices. And then, far-off sirens. Lena stood. Behind her, through the trees, the black SUV of the FBI response team came barreling down the gravel path, tires kicking up dust and pine needles. Thor jumped out before it fully stopped. His eyes met Lena's, and he nodded once. "No hesitation?" he asked. She shook her head. "They're inside. I heard them." He signaled to the drilling unit. Within seconds, a heavy-duty, portable core drill was hoisted from the back of the van. The sound it made when it struck the cinder block was deafening, but beneath it, Lena swore she heard another sound, the shift of bodies, a gasp. They knew they were being found. Good. The wall cracked, dust puffed out like breath, and behind it, still shadows. But that would change, because they had come, and the world, brick by brick, was running out of places to hide the truth. The wall gave way with a final groan, concrete splitting like a wound forced open. Dust settled into the air in a choking cloud. Lena stepped in first, flashlight beams slicing through the dark. Behind her, Bruno padded close, silent, alert. Thor followed, weapon drawn. They expected a room, a hiding place, maybe even captives. But what they found was colder than that. The space beyond the wall wasn't a cell. It was a theater. A room without windows, lined with panels of screens stacked 3, 4 high, 20, maybe 30 in total. Every screen displayed a different feed. Live camera footage, mostly low resolution, like something pulled from wireless nanny cams or hidden devices. Some shaky, others fixed. And all of them showed the same subject: children, in real time. Lena's throat tightened. A boy on a swing, pushed by a grandmother in a suburban backyard. A girl chasing bubbles at a birthday party. A toddler asleep in a crib, the glow of a nightlight casting a soft blue haze. Every image felt invasive, wrong, like they had walked into the mind of something that had long since stopped seeing children as human, just patterns, products, targets. On one wall, notes were pinned beneath certain screens. Too noisy. Unstable home. No siblings equals ideal. Someone had been grading them. Thor cursed under his breath. Jesus! Then Lena saw it. Third screen from the left. Second row down. A girl with long black hair, braiding her doll on the front steps of a townhouse. Lena didn't breathe. "That's my block," she whispered. "That's 2 streets from me. Prescott Avenue." Bruno whined low, ears perked. His body tensed. He remembered the smell of that neighborhood, the scent of children playing in safety, or what used to be safety. Lena stepped closer to the screen. The angle of the footage wasn't from a distance. It was close personal, like someone had stood 10 feet from the girl and recorded her from their pocket. Thor was already pulling cables, tagging hard drives. "Everything gets bagged. We'll need tech to extract the streams." Lena didn't answer. Her hand had moved to her chest, just above her badge. She stared at the screen like it might blink back at her. "This isn't surveillance," she said finally. "It's cataloging." Thor turned. "Say again?" She pointed to the small whiteboard mounted beside the desk. Names, ages, brief descriptions, underlined labels like retrieved and waiting. And beside one, Alina, rescheduled. That name. The little girl who whispered about lemon-scented women and ceiling music. They had scheduled her. They were still watching her. She turned to Thor, voice barely a whisper now. "This isn't over. They weren't just collecting them. They were studying them. Planning. This is logistics." Thor's jaw clenched. "And this is just one room." Lena nodded. The walls suddenly felt smaller. the air heavier. She stepped toward the bank of machines and slowly pulled the plug on each screen. One by one, the images vanished into black. But not before she saw the last frame on the bottom right. A familiar park, the bronze turtle sculpture, the sandbox with the hidden phone, and in the distance Bruno, caught in the frame, ears perked, staring straight at the lens. They had been watching him too. A chill raced down her spine. "These aren't just eyes," she said. "They're warnings, messages. They're saying, 'We see you.'" Thor's voice was hard now. "Well, now we see them." Outside, the generators buzzed as techs began their work. Evidence bags filled, cables removed, batteries detached with gloved hands. But Lena just stood there, in the middle of it all, surrounded by darkness and flickering ghosts. Bruno sat at her side, leaning gently into her leg. And in that moment, she realized, for every child rescued, someone had marked them as a delivery. And for every screen unplugged, someone out there was already planning how to light it back up. The air in the basement felt thicker the farther they walked, like each breath had to fight past secrets to reach their lungs. The banks of dark monitors were behind them now. Thor's forensics team worked in murmurs, cataloging hard drives and ripped-out cables. But Bruno's body language said the hunt wasn't finished. He kept nosing a narrow corridor that veered off the main hub, every few steps glancing back to make sure Lena followed. The passage narrowed, ceiling lowering to unfinished joists. A single bulb flickered at the far end, illuminating a warped plywood door. No lock, no handle, just a push plate polished by countless ungloved hands. Bruno growled, low and vibrating, as if the wood itself reeked of something he despised. Lena pushed the door. It swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a room no bigger than a tool shed. No computers here, only paper. Shelves lined 3 walls, stacked with cardboard files and plastic milk crates. On the back wall, secured by 4 thumbtacks, hung a single sheet of foam board, rows and columns hand-drawn in black marker like a twisted classroom chart. First name only, age, code number, 3 status bubbles, scouted vertical bar, retrieved vertical bar, delivered. Some names had neat X's through all 3 bubbles, final, permanent. Others had only the first 2 circled. Those entries glared like half-closed eyes. Lena stepped closer, penlight sweeping the grid. The circle around delivered was darker than the others, as if the pen had pressed harder, savoring the completion. A pulse beat behind Lena's temple. Ava Callahan hadn't just been taken, she'd been processed. Marked complete. A transaction finished. Bruno pressed his head against her thigh, whining. His gaze fixed on a lower section where fresh ink glistened. The final bubble was empty, but a thin diagonal pencil line had been started as if someone was interrupted mid-stroke. Next to Jonah, another familiar name bled red. Lena's fingers clenched around the penlight. "They scheduled her for today," she whispered. "The van, the tranquilizers." Alina was next in line. Her voice barely carried, but Bruno responded with a deep, rumbling bark that startled the stillness. He wheeled toward the opposite wall, bare concrete except for faint chalk lines. He sniffed, pawed once, then twice, nails scraping grit. Something behind that slab stirred his hackles. Lena tapped her radio. "Captain, I need ground-penetrating radar on the second chamber wall. Bruno's flagging something buried or sealed." "Copy. Sending the unit." While she waited, she scanned more of the board. The names blurred. Mila, Tristan, Zoe, Caleb, Jada. So many first names divorced from last names, from parents, from laughter, each accompanied by a code and, for too many, that irreversible third circle. Her flashlight slid to the corner where a stack of binders rested on a crate. She opened the top one. Inside, plastic sleeves held Polaroids, children photographed against plain backdrops. Each snapshot stapled to a purchase order form. Beside price columns, neat check marks in different ink colors, commodity ledgers. A tremor started at the base of her spine and climbed. Bruno barked again louder. The concrete wall gave a hushed metallic echo. Lena knelt, felt for seams, none. But a faint airflow kissed her fingertips through an uneven mortar line. The radar unit arrived, 2 agents rolling a suitcase-sized scanner. They swept the wall. The tablet in Lena's hand displayed dense blue for solid material except a wide rectangle glowing pale green. A void. Hidden cavity, the tech confirmed. roughly 6 by 3 feet. Depth, 2. A closet? Thor asked, stepping in. Or acute, Lena muttered. She motioned to a breaching specialist. Minutes later, a rotary hammer chewed into concrete. Dust spiraled. The cavity opened, revealing a stainless steel locker sealed by a magnetic clamp and wired to a battery pack. Inside, bundles of sealed envelopes, each labeled with a date and code. Lena tore one open. Passports, 6 of them. Children's photos digitally altered to match IDs. Stamped exit visas from countries that wouldn't question why a child traveled alone under diplomatic courier. Her knees weakened. She caught herself on Bruno's harness. Ava's fate didn't end at the plane. It continued across oceans, into bureaucracies that never saw her real face. Thor's voice cut through her fog. We just escalated to federal trafficking with international endpoints. I'll get Interpol on the line. Lena turned back to the board. She uncapped a red Sharpie and, with a shaking hand, wrote across the foam in bold strokes. Not delivered. She slashed through Ava's row, through Jonah's, through every child whose story hadn't been closed by a courtroom yet. The ink bled into foam, defiant. Bruno let out one final growl. Softer now. Leaning his weight into her leg, she knelt, pressing her forehead to his. We've got their names, she breathed. Now we give them faces again. Outside the secret room, the world still spun agents shouting coordinates, hard drives whirring into evidence bags, sirens wailing their late apology through the morning air. But in here, surrounded by nameless keepers of accounts, Lena felt the axis shift. Because lists could burn, and ghosts, once named, could be hunted. Theme: exposure without rescue means nothing. Thursday, 9:42 a.m. A gray sky pressed low over Martridge, the kind of slate ceiling that muffled sound and made colors look like old photographs. Lena eased her unmarked SUV onto Redwood Lane, engine idling as she killed the lights. From the passenger seat, Bruno raised his head, amber eyes fixed on the derelict storefront halfway down the block. Parkside Memories, Child and Family Portraits. The letters on the sign were sun-bleached. 2 had fallen, leaving rust shadows behind. To any passerby, the studio looked deserted. Boards over the front windows, a closed-for-renovation banner tattered and half-torn. But surveillance from the rest stop servers told a different story. Every Thursday, a low-frequency ping from an interior Wi-Fi router sprang to life for exactly 3 hours, then went dark. Today was Thursday. Lena slipped a handheld scanner from the dash. The screen pulsed. Router ID 6 farad, 72. PM signal strength, 78%. Somebody was home. Ready? She whispered. Bruno's reply was a quiet rumble, more felt than heard. She circled to the alley, keeping to the cracked brick shadows. Dumpster lids sagged under rainwater. Weeds pushed through concrete like stubborn memories. Halfway down the passage, Bruno stopped, nose to the ground. He tracked an invisible thread to a side door, painted the same color as the wall, a camouflage, broken only by a fresh scuff where a boot had scraped the surface. Lena crouched, gloved hand brushing the jamb. The lock had been replaced recently. Polished metal reflected the overcast light. She glanced at Bruno. On 3, she counted silently. 1, 2. On 2, Bruno surged, planting his front paws against the door with a thud that rattled hinges. Inside, a startled shout, a crash of equipment. Lena swung the battering bar. Once metal met metal. Lock sheared, door yawning inward. Bruno slipped through first. Lena followed, weapon drawn. Dust mote light spilled from fluorescent panels overhead, illuminating a scene that felt more stage than workspace. Backdrops of pastel rainbows and storybook castles lined one wall. Racks of miniature costumes, princess gowns, firefighter jackets, teddy, bear, onesies filled the other. But the room's center held the stillness of a crime paused at intermission. A little girl, no more than 7, stood on a white bench, hands folded in her lap. She wore a blue tulle dress with satin ribbon bows at the shoulders. But her shoulders were rigid, chin tilted by unseen instruction. Her eyes wide, glassy, didn't track Lena. They stared past the lens of a professional DSLR aimed at her from a tripod. Behind the camera, a man fiddled with settings. Thin, mid-40s, receding hairline. His eyes flicked up at Bruno's growl. Panic flared so bright it seemed to bleach his face. Beside the girl, a woman in nurse scrubs adjusted the child's bow with clinical precision, muttering, "Hold still, sweetheart. Almost done." The woman turned, saw the badge, and froze. "Police," Lena said, voice echoing off seamless paper. "Step back. Hands where I can see them." The man bolted. Bruno was faster. 60 pounds of muscle and purpose slammed him against the backdrop roll, camera crashing to the floor. The tripod snapped like brittle bone. The woman shrank to the wall, arms raised. Lena reached the bench. Up close, the girl's vacant focus shattered. Tears welled, but didn't fall, as though she'd been coached not to ruin mascara she wasn't wearing. Lena knelt, lowering her weapon. "What's your name?" The girl's whisper barely lifted. Molly." Lena eased her off the bench, wrapping a thermal foil blanket from her pouch around trembling shoulders. The foil crackled. Molly flinched. "No one's going to hurt you now," Lena murmured, guiding her behind a lighting softbox. Thor and 2 FBI agents swept in, cuffing the photographer and nurse. Lena scanned the room. Every surface screamed staged innocence. Yet seams of deception showed. A tray of lollipops still in plastic, unopened. An IV bag half full of clear fluid tucked behind foam boards. A laptop open to a folder labeled 2 Shoots. She clicked. Thumbnails filled the screen, children in different outfits, each file stamped with a code matching the inventory sheet from Scenic Trail Junction. In the corner, upload complete, 5 of 5. Cloud sync active. They hadn't just been taking photos, they'd been broadcasting them in real time. Thor's shout broke through. "Hart, over here!" She hurried to the backroom doorway. Inside, a mini lab, ring lights, color cards, instant printers. On a corkboard, sticky notes scrawled with buyer handles and delivery bids. At the center, today's schedule pinned with a red thumbtack. 10 o'clock Molly, code 813S. Theme, Bluebird Tea Party. 10:30 hold. 11 o'clock. Redhead variant pending arrival. A chill laced down Lena's spine. Redhead variant. Ava's ghost flirting with the margins again. She pocketed the schedule and turned back to find Bruno pressing his paw against a wall panel seam. A shallow recess. She pried it open. Inside, 4 vials of ketamine, preloaded syringes, duct tape, toy tiaras. Bruno growled, throat vibrating against her fingertips. "Yeah," she whispered, eyes burning. "I know." Molly clung to Bruno's neck fur as agents escorted her outside to awaiting EMTs. The photographer sobbed, insisting he only took pictures. The nurse stared at Lena with hollow defiance, lips tight as twisted wire. "You don't get it," she hissed as they led her past. "There'll always be parents who never look up from their phones." Lena didn't answer. The woman wasn't worth words. She stepped into the alley, lungs filling with rain-damp air. Bruno sat beside her, gaze following Molly's ambulance as its doors closed. For a moment, sirens swallowed the street, then faded toward the hospital. Overhead, the clouds finally broke, a light drizzle speckling Bruno's coat. Lena crouched, forehead to his. "Another one home," she said. Bruno chuffed softly, but his eyes drifted back to the studio. Inside, agents still cataloged props, cases, binders, proof. And yet, as the rain fell harder and the empty sign creaked in the wind, Lena's relief tasted like iron. Because Parkside Memories was only one Thursday address. Tomorrow would write a new name on a new chalkboard unless they stayed ahead. She rose, radio buzzing with fresh coordinates from digital forensics. Another ping, another hub. "Come on, partner," Lena whispered, opening the cruiser door. "We're still on the clock." Bruno leapt inside without hesitation. The engine growled to life, wipers sweeping mist from the windshield. Behind them, Parkside Memories sagged in the rain balloons, deflating. Fairy tale backdrops wilting. The lie exposed. Ahead, sirens lit the road, pointing them to the next wound in the map. They drove into the storm. The interrogation room at Martridge Precinct was small, windowless, and painted a color that wasn't quite gray but wasn't anything else either. The fluorescents hummed low, casting stark shadows beneath the table and around the man cuffed to its surface. He sat hunched, head bowed, the quiet sobs in his chest so steady they might have been a metronome. Across from him, Lena watched in silence. Beside her chair, Bruno lay perfectly still, his eyes never leaving the man's trembling hands. The dog's body language spoke clearly. Move. And I moved faster. Lena had seen men like this before, middle-aged, unassuming, the kind who held doors at grocery stores, never got parking tickets, smiled politely at neighbors. But under the dim interrogation light, this man's skin was pale and slick, his fingers twitching like broken branches caught in a wire fence. "Do you know why you're here?" Lena asked softly, breaking the silence. The photographer flinched, as if her voice physically stung him. He raised watery eyes. I didn't hurt anyone. I just took pictures, that's all." She leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. "Pictures of kids, pictures of children who had no business being in front of your camera. Explain that." He swallowed hard. "It was just a job. They told me to set the lights, get the angles. I don't even pick them, I swear." "And who are they?" He shook his head rapidly, fear deepening lines on his forehead. "No names. We don't use names. It was always numbers or codes. Messages came from different phones, different numbers each time." Lena opened a manila folder, sliding out the photographs they'd recovered from the studio. She spread them gently, deliberately across the table, like an accusation. Each face stared up with forced smiles and empty eyes. He recoiled as if slapped. "Look at them," Lena said quietly. "Look at every single child you've photographed. Each one of them had a name, a favorite color, a dream about growing up. And you turned them into stock images for someone's twisted catalog." His gaze shifted across the photos, lingering longest on the girl they'd found today, Molly, in her blue tulle dress, a doll placed in human form. His breathing quickened, short, uneven. Bruno's ears perked slightly. The man's panic was filling the room, thickening the air like smoke. "These children weren't models," Lena continued. "They were targets. You made them targets." He began shaking his head more violently. "You don't understand. I'm just the camera guy. They told me nothing. I got a schedule every week. Thursdays. Every Thursday. They drop off. I photograph. They pick up. That's all. Please, you have to believe me." She leaned back slowly. "You expect me to believe you spent weeks, months doing this and never asked why?" His voice cracked, strained high and brittle. "They paid me to stop asking. After the first session, they doubled my pay. They said no questions. I knew something was off, but I thought it's not my business. I'm just pictures, just images." Lena tapped one of the photos sharply. "Tell me how it works. Walk me through your day. From the beginning." He took a ragged breath, eyes fixed on the stainless steel tabletop, hands shaking visibly. "Every Thursday, 9 a.m., I show up. The nurse, the lady she preps them. Sometimes there's one kid, sometimes 2 or 3. They dress them, style them, tell me the themes. Fairy tale, costume party, bedtime stories." He stopped, choking slightly. "Go on," Lena prompted. Softer this time. "I take pictures. 20, maybe 30 per kid. Different angles. They upload them live, somewhere remote. Then afterward they pick up the kids. Always somebody different. Different car, different plates. By nightfall, the studio's empty again." He swallowed. "Then today, they were rushing me. The messages said they were rotating inventory. I didn't know what it meant, I swear." Lena's blood froze. "Rotating inventory?" He nodded urgently, eyes wide now. "That's exactly what they said. Tonight. They're rotating inventory tonight. I think they're moving all of them." It sounded big or urgent. "Like an emergency." Bruno growled low, sensing Lena's spike in adrenaline. Lena leaned forward sharply, eyes locked with his. "Inventory means children. You realize that, right? Human beings. They're not products." I know, he gasped. "But they don't see it that way. They never did. I wasn't supposed to either." "Where's this happening? Tonight's rotation. Where?" His eyes widened further, panic overtaking him completely. "They never said locations. Only times and numbers. Coordinates sent last minute. Always burner phones. Texts erased immediately." She reached across and grabbed his wrist, forcing eye contact. "Then who else knows? Someone must." He shook beneath her grip. "The nurse, maybe. She prepped the kids. She got them ready for transport. She spoke to whoever picked them up. She's closer. Lena released him and sat back. Her mind raced, calculating, ticking off timelines and possibilities. Rotating inventory. It was too organized, too meticulous. This wasn't just trafficking, it was logistics, a sophisticated supply chain. Children moved, hidden, distributed. Each Thursday, a fresh batch of photographs for new buyers. "We have to stop them tonight," Lena whispered, almost to herself. He stared at her, eyes glassy. "They'll know I've talked. They'll kill me." She fixed him with a steady gaze. "Not if we find them first." He sank back in the chair, tears finally breaking free. "What have I done?" "You helped them," Lena said firmly. "Now, help us." Every detail, names, codes, descriptions, anything. He nodded slowly, defeated. "I'll give you what I can." Bruno rose to his feet, shaking gently, eyes fixed firmly on the man. Lena gathered the photos back into the folder. As she stood, Bruno positioned himself protectively between them. At the door, Lena paused, turning back one final time. "I hope you're haunted by every face you've captured. I hope they never let you sleep again." The door clicked shut behind her, sealing him inside with his guilt. In the corridor outside, Lena pressed a trembling hand to Bruno's fur. He leaned into her, sensing the weight she carried. "Tonight," she breathed. "We're running out of time." Bruno whined softly, his eyes locked with hers, determined, ready. Together, they hurried toward the command center, urgency driving each step. Because inventory wasn't just product. Inventory was children. And tonight, the inventory was moving again. The night had lost its color. Darkness draped over the fields like a woolen shroud as Lena stood outside the broken-down farmhouse, her breath fogging in the cold. Crickets had gone silent. Even the wind, which had whistled through the barnyard fence earlier, now held its breath. Behind her, the task force crouched in formation, 6 officers and 1 German shepherd with his nose to the ground. Muscles taut, ears perked forward like radar. Inside, somewhere in the belly of that house, 5 children were waiting. They didn't know rescue was coming. They'd likely stopped believing in that sort of thing a long time ago. Lena closed her eyes for a second and felt Bruno press against her leg, solid and real. His body quivered not from fear, but from the tension of knowing. He always knew, long before they did. A green nod from Agent Morales at the rear confirmed the perimeter was covered. Lena drew her weapon. "Go," she whispered. The door cracked open without resistance. Bruno slipped through first, low and silent, like a shadow. Lena followed, boots careful on warped wooden floorboards that groaned like someone trying not to scream. The air inside was wrong. It wasn't just the dust or the rot in the walls, it was the absence of warmth. No family photos, no furniture that spoke of life, just piles of plastic bins, stacked neatly like someone's grim inventory. One corner held a mattress, thin as cardboard, stained and folded like it had lost the fight. And then, the sound. A muffled sob. Faint. Fragile. Bruno's ears twitched. He turned sharply and growled low, his body stiffening. He led them toward a door near the back of the hallway, unpainted, padlocked, and sealed with a rubber wedge from the outside. Lena stepped in. "Back," she whispered to Bruno. She crouched, used bolt cutters on the lock with one solid clink that echoed louder than it should have. She kicked the door in, and hell opened. 5 children huddled together in a room smaller than a pantry. No windows, a heat lamp, long dead, hung from a wire above them. Their wrists were zip-tied to a metal pipe that ran along the wall. There were blankets but damp, and covered in something that might have been mildew. Empty food wrappers lay beside a bucket that stank of urine. The kids didn't scream, didn't flinch, they just stared. A boy with a bruised temple, a girl with matted red curls. One child looked no older than 4, curled against the others like a leaf pressed flat by rain. The oldest, a girl in a torn hoodie, looked Lena in the eyes with the stillness of someone who had outlived too many versions of herself. Bruno stepped forward. He didn't bark, didn't snarl. He moved slowly, like approaching glass. The children watched, frozen. Then the smallest girl, a thin thing with skin pale as snow, lifted her chin and whispered, hoarse and trembling, "The dog came back. Lena's breath caught. She crouched down, slowly removing her gloves. You remember him? The little girl nodded. Her hands trembled and the zip ties cut angry red lines into her wrists. He was there, at the truck. I saw his eyes. He didn't leave us. Bruno reached her. He nuzzled her hand gently, and she burst into silent tears. Lena moved quickly, pulling out trauma shears to cut the bindings. You're safe now. All of you. We're here. The older girl didn't cry. She just stared as Lena worked on her hands, then asked with a voice that barely belonged to someone so young, Will they come back? Lena looked her in the eye. Not tonight. Not ever again. One by one, the officers entered, speaking in low tones, handing out thermal blankets, juice boxes, stuffed animals from the crisis kits. They carried the kids out with arms that shook not from weight, but from fury. One boy flinched when someone touched his back. Another covered his eyes at the camera flash, meant for documentation. Bruno stayed inside the whole time, walking between them like a silent sentinel. He sniffed wounds, offered his fur to lean on. The kids trusted him in a way they couldn't yet trust humans again. Outside, paramedics waited with gentle hands and warm vans. Lights flashed red and blue against the frost-laced grass. But to the children, it must have felt like color returning to a black and white world. Lena stood back and watched them leave, one by one. The girl in the hoodie turned before entering the ambulance. What's his name? Lena looked down at Bruno. He answers to Bruno, she said with a soft smile. The girl nodded. He's brave. Lena met her gaze. So are you. And for the first time, the girl smiled. Not wide, not full, but it was real. As the vans pulled away, Lena knelt beside Bruno and buried her face in the thick fur of his neck. You did it, she whispered, voice cracking. You found them. Bruno licked her cheek once and looked out into the night, ears alert. There was still more to do, more waiting in the dark. But for tonight, the silence was broken. The home without heat no longer held ghosts. It held hope. The office was quiet. Not the peaceful kind. This was the kind of quiet that hums behind your ribs and makes your skin crawl, like the moment just before a storm breaks open. Lena sat at her desk, early morning light casting long slats of gold across the papers she hadn't touched yet. The coffee in her cup had gone cold. She hadn't taken a sip, because something was wrong. It started with Bruno. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stopped at the door when she entered that morning, planted his body square in the doorway, and sniffed once deep and deliberate. Then he moved slowly to her desk, his claws clicking softly against the tile, and sat down. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't relax. He was watching. She followed his gaze. At first, it looked like just another file envelope. Tan, nondescript, no return address, no markings. Just her name, scrawled in sharp black ink across the top. Lena Morales. She didn't open it like a detective. She opened it like a woman who's already tired of the game, already angry. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once. She unfolded it. Her fingers stopped moving before her breath did. You are too loud. Next time, the dog dies. Nothing else. No signature. No watermark. Just those 7 words, typed on plain white paper. The font was Times New Roman. Centered, clinical, almost bored. Like whoever wrote it wasn't rushing. Like they didn't need to shout anymore. They had time now. Lena's jaw tightened. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She slid the note into a Ziploc evidence bag with steady hands and placed it inside a manila folder labeled Missed Threats, Ongoing Cases. Then she exhaled. Bruno padded over and lay at her feet, head on his paws, calm, watchful, as if he'd read the note too. She reached down and touched the top of his head, her thumb tracing the little scar above his brow where he'd been grazed in the farm raid 2 weeks ago. He didn't move. He didn't need to, because now it was personal. They weren't just trying to intimidate her. They were targeting the one thing in this world that never judged her, never doubted her, and never once failed her. And she knew what that meant. The operation was running scared. When monsters write notes, it means they're losing control. But it also means they're cornered and dangerous. Lena stood slowly, feeling the heat rise in her chest. Not fear, not quite rage either. It was resolve. She looked around the precinct's empty bullpen, The corkboard behind her desk was still covered in pins and strings and printed photos of children, some found, some still gone. Ava Callahan's school portrait, thumbtacked to the upper corner, stared back at her with that soft, gap-toothed smile. They hadn't found her yet. Lena tapped the folder containing the threat note once, like she was sealing a deal. Then she grabbed a black Sharpie and scribbled something on the front, above the label. Their mistake. She tucked the folder into the bottom drawer of her desk. Bruno let out a slow exhale, then shifted slightly closer to her foot, like a soldier recentering on the battlefield. She turned to her laptop, pulled up the footage from the school takedown, reviewed body cam timestamps, GPS markers, transport patterns, delivery routes. Everything still unspoken between the notes and the footage, the cracks in the system they hadn't sealed. This wasn't about fear. This was about time. They knew she was closing in, and now they'd tried to rattle her. But they didn't understand. She wasn't rattled. She was sharpened. Her eyes flicked toward Bruno again. He'd finally laid his head down, ears twitching slightly. Not asleep, but resting like a lion does on edge. But elegant. "Not today, partner," she whispered. "You're not going anywhere." She didn't tell anyone else about the note yet. Not because she didn't trust them, but because she wanted the next move to be hers. Clean, untelegraphed. She opened a fresh case file on her screen. The heading: Secondary Logistics Operators. Suspected female driver. School incident. Because there were more. Always more. And now, she was going to find every last one of them. Not just for Ava. Not just for Jonah or Alina. But for Bruno. Because he didn't bark unless someone was in danger. And today, someone had tried to put him in it. That made it personal. That made it war. The map stretched across the briefing room wall like a surgical wound waiting to be stitched shut. Red pins, blue pins, green circles, black X's. At a glance, it looked chaotic random. But Lena had long since stopped trusting the surface of things. There was always a rhythm in the noise. And Bruno had always sensed it before anyone else. Lena stepped back, arms crossed, lips tight. Behind her, Agent Callum from the FBI was muttering into his phone. Agent D'Angelo was pulling files from a weathered briefcase that looked older than Bruno. And Officer Hayes from the neighboring precinct hovered near the coffee pot, staring into his cup like it might whisper the answers. Bruno lay in the center of the room, tail still, chin on his paws. But his eyes followed everything, every movement, every sound, every silence. Lena picked up the remote and clicked through the projected slides on the whiteboard. Slide 1, Sweet Wheels Distribution Map, last 6 months. Slide 2, Missing Children by Region. Slide 3, Known and Suspected Photo Studio Sites. Slide 4, Ghost Sighting Logs. That last one had become a joke to some of the newer agents. But Lena didn't laugh anymore. Not after what she'd seen on her own body cam footage frame by frame. The same blurred figure in khaki pants and a clipboard, always leaving just as chaos arrived. Not once had the cameras caught their face. Not once had facial recognition returned a match. And yet they were always there. "I don't believe in ghosts," Callum said as he leaned on the back of a chair, still chewing on the cap of his pen. "You should," Lena replied deadpan. "This one leaves fingerprints." D'Angelo grunted in agreement, his eyes not leaving the map. "And GPS pings." Lena nodded and walked over to the board, clicking a magnetic light into place over a point on the western edge. "Prescott Elementary," she said. "The day of the second truck. Look what happens when you zoom out." She clicked again. The screen blinked, then panned back cities and towns clustering like bruises around a center no one had named yet. 5 total. Each marked by 3 identical pins. One for a Sweet Wheels mobile vendor, one for a staged photo studio, and one for a confirmed or suspected ghost figure sighting. But that wasn't the most chilling part. All 5 cities fell within a perfect 2-hour drive radius of one another. "A delivery circuit," Callum murmured. "Rotating drop-off points. They move the kids like inventory." "And the trucks are the wrappers," D'Angelo added, voice low. "Disguise it in sweetness. Make it familiar. Safe." Lena stared at the map. Her throat felt dry. "They count on our nostalgia," she whispered. "Ice cream trucks, photo studios, birthday balloons. They hide in the things that make parents let their guard down." Bruno shifted on the floor. Lena looked down. His head had lifted slightly, nose flaring. Just once. He'd heard something in her voice. A weight. A wire being pulled too tight. She crouched beside him and pressed her palm to his chest, grounding herself in his steadiness. "This map isn't just where they've been," she said. "It's where they'll be." The room went quiet. For a full 10 seconds, no one spoke. Then Callum exhaled. "We've been reacting, always a step late." D'Angelo nodded. "It's time to preempt, predict the next move." Lena tapped the 6th pin she'd been holding in her pocket since the night before. She pressed it into a town called Bayfield, just outside the circle but within reach. A town with a scheduled carnival this weekend. A town with a new permit issued to, according to DMV logs, a Sweet Wheels vendor. "What's in Bayfield?" Hayes asked, his brow furrowing. "A park with no cameras," Lena said. "And a school hosting a fair 2 days later. And a missing girl reported last year, still unresolved. And a ghost sighting," D'Angelo added grimly, holding up a dispatch report. "Same guy. Same clipboard. Seen walking away from the carnival truck after sunset." Lena stood. "We're not waiting this time," she said. "We build the net. We go in quiet. No sirens, no press. If we're wrong, we pull out. But if we're right, we pull them out." Callum finished. Bruno barked once. Not loud, not sharp, but enough to make every head turn, as if to say, "Finally." Lena looked at him and nodded. "Get the team ready," she told them. "This ends where it started, in sweetness. The farmhouse looked exactly as it had the night they found the children. Porch lights dimmed, weeds choking the gravel path, an old wind chime creaking in the silence. Except it wasn't real. Not tonight. Inside, the rooms were empty. The lights, rigged. The images on the surveillance feed? A seamless loop stitched together by the Bureau's digital team, a bait carefully crafted from old body cam footage and aerial drone stills. Every detail preserved just enough to whisper, "We're here again." But they weren't. This time, they were the ones watching. Lena stood in the surveillance van 2 blocks away, arms crossed, headphones clamped over her ears. The glow of the monitors lit up her face in hues of pale green and blue. Beside her, Callum's fingers danced over the keyboard, initiating the stream, splicing in the final flicker of audio from the farmhouse discovery. Bruno lay curled at her boots, motionless except for the occasional flick of an ear. "Loop's live," Callum muttered it. "Camera 3 is the feed we expect him to breach. You think he'll take the bait?" Lena didn't answer right away. She was staring at the screen. In the video, her own face appeared slightly younger, more tired, kneeling beside one of the rescued kids. A flashlight beam cuts across the room. Bruno steps into frame. The loop resets and begins again. "Yes," she finally said. "He needs to know what we know." More than once, she'd learned, predators don't vanish when you get close. They taunt, they linger. Because for people like him, it's not just about power. It's about control, about proving they're always one step ahead. And just as Callum predicted exactly 18 minutes into the loop, a breach alert chimed. "Feed override incoming," the tech whispered. Lena leaned closer. The loop stuttered. Screen flickered, then static, and a new image faded in. It wasn't the farmhouse anymore. It was a room bathed in soft, industrial light, unfurnished, except for a single folding chair and the figure seated on it. Male, mid-40s maybe, clean-shaven, calm, as if he were about to give a lecture, not hijack a federal surveillance sting. He didn't speak right away. He smiled, and then he clapped. Slow, deliberate, sarcastic. "Clever," the man said, voice like silk, pulled over a blade. Loops within loops. Almost had me watching it twice. Almost. Lena's spine stiffened. Behind him, a faint blur came into focus. A wall, painted a dull peach tone, and a door slightly ajar, and there, high in the corner, a ceiling fan, spinning lazily, a smudge mark on the plaster. Lena's blood ran cold. "I know that room," she breathed. "I've been in that room." Callum turned to her. "Where?" She didn't answer. "Not yet." On screen, the man leaned forward. I suppose you want names, he said mockingly. Locations. The big reveal, right? He chuckled. You're still behind. You're always behind. You chase after candy trucks while the real shipments go through customs in crates of oranges. You break down farmhouse doors, while basements with reinforced locks lie untouched beneath orphanages with 5-star charity ratings. He smiled again. Still, I'll give you something. The screen glitched just for a moment, and then resolved again. This time, the man was holding a note card, slowly lifting it toward the camera. It read, Bayfield was just the dress rehearsal. Callum's face darkened. He knows about the op. He's watching us, Lena whispered. The man's smile disappeared. The camera zoomed in slightly. His voice dropped into something colder. You brought a good dog. He ruined the ice cream act. Smart. Loyal. A pause. Pity about the next one. The screen blinked out. Just darkness. Silence filled the van like floodwater. Then, Lena stood. Fast. Her chair slammed backward into the wall. That room, she said, her voice low, jaw clenched. That fan, that smudge. I remember it. From when I interviewed the first girl, Alina. She drew it. She grabbed her folder, flipping through until she found the crude crayon sketch of a ceiling fan and a peach wall. She remembered it, Lena said, breathing hard. We assumed it was from the farmhouse. It wasn't. It was from before. Callum pulled up the registry. Start cross-referencing housing codes. Look for any buildings with peach interiors. Utility registrations matching that fan model, commercial or semi-commercial licenses. But Lena was already dialing. Bruno stood now, alert, ears perked. He could feel it too, whatever was coming next. Who are you calling? Callum asked. Lena didn't answer until the line clicked. Then she said quietly, the girl's foster home. Alina's. She never made eye contact in that room. Not once. Because she'd been there before, the voice on the other end answered. Lena took a breath, steady but sharp. This is Officer Lena Reyes, she said. I need to confirm the paint color in Alina Vargas's bedroom, immediately. The rain had turned to needles by the time they reached Riverbend. Unit B-14 looked like nothing, just another prefab shed behind a shuttered storage facility near the freight rail line. Gray, quiet. A unit so ordinary, it became invisible, especially in a place built to be forgotten. But Bruno wasn't fooled. His tail had gone stiff before they even turned off the ignition. Now, crouched low outside the chain-link gate, his ears pricked forward, silent, coiled. Ready. Lena signaled to her team. One finger up, another down. No words. They moved like breath in the cold. She keyed the override on the lockbox pre-cleared by federal warrant and pushed the roll-up door halfway. The stench met them first. Old metal, sweat, plastic wrap, something rotten, masked poorly with lemon-scented wipes. Bruno growled. Low and raw. Not a warning. A recognition. Lena stepped in first. And what she saw made her stop cold. There were cages. 4 of them. Too small for comfort. Just large enough for containment. Inside, 4 children. 2 boys, 2 girls. All under 10. The boy closest to her had a black eye that looked days old. One of the girls rocked back and forth, her lips moving but no sound coming out. Lena dropped to one knee, voice trembling but soft. You're safe now. My name is Lena. This is Bruno. He's here for you. Bruno stepped forward slowly, pressing his nose to the bars, then sat beside them, as still as stone. The boy with the black eye didn't speak. Not until one of the girls reached through the cage and placed her tiny hand on Bruno's head. Then he whispered, They took the twins last night. Lena's heart twisted. Where? I don't know, the boy said. But he had a plane ticket. A plane ticket? He nodded, eyes wide. He said, They were special order. Like, not for here. Far. Callum's voice crackled in her earpiece. We've got logs, digital manifests on a cheap burner. There's a flight scheduled out of Carson Airfield, 2:42 a.m. Cargo Bay manifest has 2 flagged containers. No sender. Lena stood. Ita, plane leaves in 40. We're 35 out with lights and sirens. Lena turned to the cages, her voice firm now. We're getting you out. Now. Her team swarmed in bolt cutters, snapping the locks. One girl collapsed the moment the door opened, caught mid-fall by Agent Dorsey. The smallest boy clung to Bruno's neck, eyes squeezing shut like if he just held on long enough, he'd wake up somewhere else. As paramedics arrived to treat and transport the children, Lena stayed behind just a moment longer. She walked toward the far wall. There was a clipboard nailed haphazardly to plywood, a schedule, departure times, initials, check marks, and one entry scribbled in red ink. TCB, 2 Entel, confirmed, 1A, 2 kids, international, tonight. Her radio clicked again. We have a name, Callum said. Custom scan tagged a prior alias driver from the truck operation. Real name, Tomasz Klenner, Polish national, used to manage offshore logistics for Get This Sweet Treats LLC before it was shut down in 2018. Lena stared at the clipboard. Same company, different costume. Callum continued. Interpol flagged him 3 years ago. He disappeared after an ICE audit until now. Lena closed her eyes, then opened them again. Send me the flight registration and the pilot manifest. You're not thinking of... I am. Another voice entered the channel. Director Pierce. Reyes, hold your position. Let aviation intercept. No time, sir, Lena said. If that plane gets off the ground, we lose them forever. She stepped outside. Bruno was already waiting at the SUV, soaked, but standing tall, as if he understood, as if he remembered what it was like to be caged, to wait in the dark, to wonder if anyone was coming. She looked down at him, and something passed between them. Not language, not instinct, something older, something bone deep. She opened the door. Let's go stop a plane. M. The private terminal at Carson Airfield was as quiet as a prayer after midnight. Not many came through Gate 9 anymore. Once built for luxury charter flights, it had become a forgotten sliver of asphalt tucked between rusted fencing and disused hangars. No digital boards, no TSA agents. Just a keypad lock, a guard who barely looked up from his sports feed, and a sign that read authorized logistics only. And yet, someone had activated the tarmac lights. Lena's tires screeched as she pulled in. Bruno barked once, sharp, not panic, alert. She unholstered her weapon and moved low across the asphalt, wind slicing through the silence like a blade. The moon hung low, blurred behind a thin film of clouds, casting the world in that strange silver hue where nothing felt fully real. Then she saw him, a man in a dark overcoat, standing alone near a black SUV. Too calm, too clean, and holding a clipboard. Her stomach dropped. The ghost. She'd watched him flicker past body cam footage for weeks, always on the edges, always walking away before anyone noticed. The figure that left no trace, no digital identity, no heat signature clear enough to match. But this time, he was flesh. And this time, he wasn't leaving. Lena approached, gun low but ready. Hands where I can see them. The man didn't flinch. He turned, slowly, casually, as if she were a minor inconvenience. And then he smiled, not the smile of someone cornered, the smile of someone who thought he still had cards to play. I've been expecting you, he said, his voice soft, cultured, almost amused. Officer Reyes. Or do you prefer agent now? Bruno stepped forward, teeth bared. The man's eyes flicked to the dog. For the first time, something shifted. Not much, but enough. A tightness at the corner of his mouth. A twitch in the fingers that held the clipboard. A moment of fear. Lena saw it. Bruno felt it. You can lower the weapon, the man said coolly. I'm just here to supervise cargo, standard clearance. There's no manifest, Lena said. She nodded toward the jet idling on the far end of the tarmac. Sleek, unmarked. No tail number in the registry. Just sitting there, humming like a secret. Private flight, the man offered. Without flight crew? Already boarded. She stepped closer. And the cargo? Are private flight crew. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Time-sensitive pharmaceuticals. You wouldn't want to delay treatment for sick children, would you? Lena's jaw clenched. You know what's really time-sensitive? She said. A child's breath inside a sealed crate. That was when the second vehicle arrived, Thor's unit. Tires grinding gravel, doors flung open. Thor barked once, loud and guttural. The man's mask cracked. He stepped back. Just half a step. Barely noticeable. But Thor moved forward, growling now, deep in the chest. And the man finally showed what he was. Afraid. Daniel Gentry, Lena said, lifting the clipboard from his hands. Former logistics director for Falcon Transnational. Fired after a warehouse fire killed 2 migrant workers. Disappeared for 5 years. Reappeared as the invisible middleman behind Sweet Wheels and half a dozen fake shell companies. She held the clipboard up. And this? This is handwritten. You're slipping. He said nothing, but his eyes flicked to the jet. And that was enough. Lena turned toward the field. Ground that plane. Now. 2 agents bolted for the tarmac. Gentry watched them go, his calm unraveling like a loose thread. You won't stop it, he said. There's always another flight. Another buyer. This is bigger than you think. Then you should have stayed a ghost. Bruno stood between them, not moving, just breathing. Heavy. Steady. Watching. Gentry's voice dropped. You don't get it. Dogs like that, they were made to obey. But they forget pain, not patterns. That one he was trained in Phoenix, Unit Delta, retired early. Know why? Lena's blood chilled. Stop talking. Because he remembered. That's your problem, Agent Reyes. You keep thinking they're just dogs, he smirked. Bruno lunged. Not to bite, just enough to make Gentry fall. The clipboard clattered. His hands scraped tarmac. And when he looked up, Bruno's breath fogged against his face, teeth inches away. Bruno, Lena said softly. Heal. Bruno stepped back, slow and deliberate. Gentry was cuffed by the time the plane's cargo bay was cracked open. Inside, 2 containers, ventilated, labeled audio equipment. Inside the containers, blankets, bottled water, and chains. No children, but signs they'd been there. Recently. Lena exhaled, rage threading through the sorrow. Gentry sat in the back of the cruiser, silent now. She looked at him once more, before closing the door. Tell me where they were going. But he said nothing, only smiled again, blood on his lip. Bruno watched him, unblinking, as the car pulled away. The air on the tarmac was heavy. Lena stood for a long while, looking at the plane, the crates, the sky. Another storm was coming, but for now, the wind was still. It was nearly 3 a.m. when the hard drive finally decrypted. In a cold-lit operations room at the Bureau's Field HQ, Lena stood over the forensic table, her arms folded tight across her chest. Bruno lay at her feet, unmoving ears, forward watching the cursor blink on the cracked laptop screen like a heartbeat suspended. The agent running the decryption, Patel, barely breathed. We're in. A flood of windows exploded across the screen. Rows of file names ordinary on the surface. Q3. Reports, shipping, summary, inventory, batches. But the further they dug, the thinner the disguise became. Folder after folder peeled back the layers. God, Patel muttered. A master ledger, sorted by location. Handler, alias, product code. No names, just initials and reference images. Shoes, backpacks, hair color. Each line item had a destination, a payment log, a status update, and most chilling, a timestamp labeled last seen. Lena swallowed hard. She pointed to one row. Look, ATL 9B, last seen timestamp 6 hours ago, still pending transport. Patel's fingers flew over the keyboard. That's a warehouse, southeast side of Atlanta, registered to a shell company under Green Path Logistics, which is a front owned by, he paused, one of the aliases Gentry used back in 2018. Lena didn't wait. Wake up, Tactical. We move in 30. The Atlanta sky was still dark when the unmarked vans circled the loading dock of the old textile warehouse. Rust streaked down the metal, siding like dried blood. The lights inside flickered faintly, just enough to suggest activity, but not enough to draw suspicion. Lena gripped the receiver tight. Eyes up. 2 heat signatures. Possibly 3. Bruno stood beside her, tail stiff, breath fogging in the cold air. There was no barking now, just silence. A kind of knowing in the way his paws shifted weight forward, muscles coiled. She gave the nod, and the door came down. Gunfire was brief. One handler fled and was tackled before he reached the gate. Inside the warehouse was a maze of shipping crates, camo tarps, industrial fans to mask scent. And in the far corner, behind 2 false wall panels, they found them. 8 children. One of them screamed when the light hit her face. Another curled into a ball and whispered, over and over, "Don't take the picture." Bruno approached carefully. No growl, no bark. Just his body low, his head tilted slightly, the way he always did when he sensed a soul on the edge. A boy maybe 6, maybe 7 opened one eye. His lip was bleeding. Then he reached out. Tiny fingers brushed Bruno's fur. And for the first time in hours, Lena exhaled. By sunrise, 8 sets of names were added to the wall. 8 small jackets hung from the backs of chairs in the recovery unit. Each one a silent symbol of a life pulled back from the edge of something unspeakable. Bruno sat among them like a sentinel guarding sleep, easing breath. But Lena couldn't sleep. Not now, because the rest of the files were worse. Deeper in Gentry's encrypted archives were coded ledgers, Bitcoin wallets tied to dark web drop points, a spreadsheet of handlers, their preferred regions, ages, and customer vetting logs. There were tags: compliant, needs sedation, previous return. Each cell made her stomach twist. But it was the final folder that changed everything. Final. Archive. Breach failsafe. Zip. It required 2-factor authentication. Patel hacked it in 12 minutes. Inside, scanned passports, transportation manifests, customs clearance requests from real names, real governments, real ports. Some of the forms bore seals from customs offices Lena recognized, stamped, signed, cleared. Someone on the inside had been helping them for years. An hour later, the bureau director walked in, pale and shaking. "You just cracked it wide open," he whispered. "How wide?" Lena asked, her voice low. "Federal, state, border patrol, DHS, even foreign aid contracts. This isn't a ring. It's an infrastructure." Lena sat down, hard. She looked at Bruno. He was watching her, not wagging, just there, present, steady. "Then we burn it down," she said. At 8:42 a.m., coordinated raids began across 5 states. By noon, 47 more children were rescued, 12 arrests made. 4 more suspects disappeared before agents arrived. But the lines on the wall were thinning now. For the first time in months, the web wasn't growing, it was folding. And in the quiet, while others celebrated, Lena walked past the wall of case photos, the ones marked found, the ones still shaded in gray, and paused at one. A girl with red hair and a missing tooth, Ava Callahan. Her square was still unmarked. Lena touched it gently and whispered, "We're not done." Behind her, Bruno stood, and for the first time in days, wagged his tail just once, quiet, but enough. The morning sun never truly rose over Waverly Falls that day. A thick amber haze hung in the air, as if the town itself held its breath. Warm winds stirred dust and carried the faint scent of smoke, something old and burned. Travis parked the cruiser outside Drexler's house on Briar Lane. It loomed like a relic Victorian, pristine, and far too polished for the man who lived there. Today the front door hung ajar, creaking softly in the breeze. No sign of a break-in, just a vacancy that felt intentional. Shadow stepped out first, nose twitching. Travis followed, hand resting on his father's revolver. The silence felt unnatural, staged. Inside, the house had been stripped bare. Family photos gone, drawers emptied. A scorched smell lingered in the air, not fire, but something close. In the office, a toppled file cabinet and shredded documents told of a hasty purge. A single ceramic ashtray still held a smoldering cigarette. "He was just here," Travis muttered. Shadow pawed at the rug. Beneath it, a metal hatch, freshly scratched. Empty. Whatever Drexler had kept there was gone. Shadow suddenly turned, muscles tense. He darted toward the kitchen, stopping at the open back door. Boot prints crossed the porch, leading into the woods behind the property. Shadow looked back at Travis, gaze sharp and unmistakable. This wasn't panic. This was planned escape. Travis followed into the thicket, branches clawing at his coat. They reached a shallow ridge. Tire tracks. Fresh. Government issue, likely. An SUV had waited here. Drexler was gone, but not without leaving a trail. Shadow sniffed the air and let out a low, purposeful huff. "You've got him?" Travis asked. Shadow moved, not searching anymore, pursuing. The old lumber yard on Waverly's Edge was once the town's lifeblood. Now, it was abandoned skeletons of corrugated iron and rusted beams. But tonight, it wasn't empty. A helicopter sat idle at the far end, unmarked and humming low, its blades cutting through fog like a whisper of urgency. Travis and Shadow moved through shadows, silent, tracking. Then, movement. Colt Merrigan stumbled into view, gaunt and fraying, dragging a duffel bag and clutching a pistol. Sweat drenched his face despite the chill. He looked at the chopper like it was salvation. "Colt!" Travis stepped out. "Don't move." Colt froze. The pistol trembled in his hand. "You shouldn't be here." Shadow growled low, circling. "You think you're getting on that bird after what you've done?" Travis asked, voice tight. Colt's eyes darted. "I was following orders. That excuse died a long time ago. You tied a mother beneath her home. You left her. You knew about the girl." "I didn't touch the kid," Colt blurted, panic in his voice. "I didn't know she got out." "You didn't report her missing? Because Drexler said it would complicate things. He called her a liability." Travis took a step forward. "Say it." "Oh." Colt's voice cracked. "Drexler gave the order." "The order for what?" Colt hesitated. The chopper's side door opened. A man in black motioned frantically. "Now!" Colt's voice dropped. "To keep her quiet, like your father." Silence. The world narrowed. Even the rotor blades felt far away. "What did you say?" Travis asked. Colt's face twisted. "It wasn't a hunting accident. Drexler said your old man was sniffing too close. Said one incident in the woods would fix it. And it did, didn't it?" "Look at you." A shell. The rage in Travis wasn't explosive. It was deep, ancient. He spoke quietly. "You're going to testify." Colt laughed bitterly. "You think I'll live to testify? That bird's not extraction. It's cleanup." Shadow barked once sharp. Colt flinched. "Put the gun down, Colt," Travis said, stepping closer. Colt raised the gun not at Travis, but toward himself. Shadow lunged. In a flash, Colt spun the gun toward the dog. Travis fired. The shot dropped Colt to the ground, his shoulder blooming red. The pistol skidded across gravel. Shadow stood firm, untouched, growling low. Travis moved fast, pinning Colt's arms and securing him with zip ties. "You're not dying tonight," he said. "You're going to answer for everything." Colt groaned. "They'll kill me." "No," Travis said, tightening the restraint. "You already made your choice. Now you live with it." The helicopter began to rise. The pilot, realizing the mission had failed, disappeared into the fog. A ghost, vanishing into silence. But it was too late. The name had been spoken. The truth cracked open. Travis stood over Colt, chest heaving, not with vengeance, but with understanding. His father hadn't been paranoid. He hadn't stumbled. He had been silenced. And now, finally, they had proof. Shadow nudged Travis's leg. The dog's body relaxed, but his eyes remained fixed on the dark sky, already searching, already hunting what came next. "This is just the start," Travis murmured. And somewhere in the distance, under trees that had seen too much, justice, the kind with teeth, had begun its run. The camera flashes started before Lena even stepped up to the podium. Behind her, a banner stretched across the wall. Department of Justice, Joint Task Force Press Briefing. But it was the figures at her side that pulled the attention, not the rows of agents in uniform, not the assistant district attorney standing with notes in hand. It was Bruno, seated tall, chest proud, gaze steady, and Thor silent, composed, his presence like a shadow of something ancient, something earned. Lena adjusted the microphone, but said nothing at first. Her eyes swept the room, reporters, survivors, families, agents who hadn't slept in 3 days, and children. Ava was in the front row with her mother's arms wrapped tightly around her. Jonah clutched a plush version of Bruno, the real one just steps away. Marcus, now smiling without fear, whispered something to his counselor. Lena cleared her throat. "I was asked to prepare a statement," she began. Her voice didn't need to rise. The silence in the room gave it strength. "But what I have to say doesn't need paragraphs." She looked down at Bruno. He sat still, tail curled neatly. Eyes on her, not for command, but for connection. "He saved them," Lena said softly. "I just followed. That was it." The room erupted. Applause thundered across the hall, not the polite kind, not the press conference kind. It was a storm of gratitude, raw, unfiltered emotion from people who understood what it meant when a child came home. Bruno didn't flinch, but he turned his head slowly toward the audience, as if taking it in, as if sensing the shift, fear fading, hope returning. Ava stood up, holding her mother's hand. She didn't cry. She didn't shrink. She waved. One wave. Tiny, but enough. Lena's eyes burned. She looked away, only to find Thor watching her. He hadn't moved, not a muscle. But his eyes held hers quiet and deep, like still water that had seen too much. She didn't know what memories lived behind that gaze, what battles he'd fought before joining the unit. But in that moment, he gave her something wordless: trust and pride. The questions came next. Reporters leaned forward. Microphones rose. Detective Hart, how far does the ring extend? Is there confirmation the Atlanta site was the hub? Is it true the children identified in the inventory sheets spanned 5 states? She answered what she could. She dodged what she had to. But every answer circled back to the same truth. This was never about just breaking a case. It was about every child who had ever disappeared into silence, and the ones who never stopped waiting to be found. Toward the end, a journalist from a local public radio station raised her hand. Not a shout, not a demand. She simply asked, "Will Bruno retire after this?" The room quieted. Lena looked down at him again, her partner, her shadow in alleys and basements and courtrooms. She gave a small smile. "Bruno will tell me when he's ready. So far, he hasn't said a word." Laughter rippled through the room. Gentle, needed. But the weight behind her smile stayed. Because the truth was, Bruno had been showing signs. His limp after the raid, the stiffness in his joints, the deeper sleep, the slower start in the morning. He was giving everything he had left, and she would not ask for one step more than that. As the conference drew to a close, someone placed a small velvet box on the podium. Inside, a medal. The Distinguished Canine Valor Commendation. Gold. Modest. Etched with a paw and a badge number. The commissioner stepped forward, made a speech Lena barely registered. Something about duty, sacrifice, bravery. Then he bent down, clipped it to Bruno's collar. The applause returned. But Bruno didn't understand ceremonies. He only leaned slightly into Lena's side, pressing against her thigh like he had so many times before, in the quiet, in the dark, when all the noise was gone and only purpose remained. Outside the conference hall, as the crowds filed out and the lights dimmed, Lena stood for a moment longer at the edge of the stage. She let her hand rest on Bruno's head. "Come on, partner," she whispered. He rose without sound. Thor followed. Together they stepped off the platform, not into an ending, but into whatever was next. Because for dogs like Bruno and Thor, and for people like Lena, justice wasn't just a case closed. It was a name remembered, a voice returned, a home restored. The garage sat behind a shuttered laundromat, its tin roof rusted at the edges. The kind of place you'd pass 100 times and never remember once. No sign, no number, just concrete and silence. Lena pulled up with the engine running, eyes narrowing at the unmarked van inside. No decals, no plates, just like the others. But this time, this was the last one. Bruno stepped out of the vehicle before she could call him. No leash, no hesitation. He moved with that deliberate weight she knew so well, his nose close to the cracked asphalt, tail low, every step a decision. Not just a search, a goodbye in progress. Thor stayed at the rear, posted like a sentinel, watching the road, watching the wind. Lena unholstered her flashlight. The air inside was still and wrong. Not the kind of wrong that made your skin crawl, the kind that numbed it. She pushed open the garage door. It groaned, metal against rusted metal, before settling into a cold hush. Nothing moved. But everything spoke. The van was empty. No blood, no crates, no children, just toys, scattered, as if dropped mid-play cheap plastic dinosaurs. A jump rope coiled near a dented cooler, a half-deflated soccer ball. Beside them, a baby blanket, folded. On the floor, worn footprints layered over one another, too many to trace, and against the far wall, an old metal shelving unit lined with photos. Row after row, not in frames, not in albums, just taped, faces, smiling, frozen. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Some photos were school portraits. Some were clearly taken from hidden angles, parks, sidewalks, a child exiting a school bus. Each one bore a mark. Some had a red line slashed across the eyes. Others had a GS scribbled below. And one, only one, was circled in blue. Bruno stood in front of it. Still, utterly still. His ears weren't pricked. His tail didn't move. He just stared. Lena followed his gaze. It was a girl. 7, maybe 8. Freckles. Red hoodie. 2 front teeth missing. Lena stepped closer and saw the name beneath. Marin. A tag number followed. Then a code. Hold. Asset pending transfer. Not date. Not location. Just pending. Lena's chest tightened. She crouched beside Bruno, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "You found her," she whispered. Bruno didn't move, didn't even blink. Behind them, Thor gave a soft, low whine. A warning, not of danger, but time. They weren't supposed to be here this long. Protocol said sweep and go. But Lena didn't move. She took out her phone and photographed the entire wall. Every face, every name. Because someone had to carry the record of this room not just for evidence, but for memory. For the kids who were found. And the ones still out there. A drawer in the corner caught her eye. Lena opened it with a jerk. Dust. Old wrappers. A crumpled ledger blank pages. Except the last one. It read, in shaky ink, "The van goes cold when she's gone. They never bring it back." A chill ran up her spine. Bruno finally moved. He turned his head slightly and pressed into Lena's leg. Just once. Just enough. He was done here. This wasn't a place of rescue. It was a graveyard of nearlies. Outside, the sun was starting to fall, amber light spilling down the alley like a final curtain. Lena locked the garage behind her. She didn't need backup. There were no suspects. No sounds. Just dust and memory. As she slid back into the vehicle, Bruno climbed in slower than usual. His hip trembled just slightly when he settled on the floorboard. She noticed, but said nothing. Instead, she reached back and ran her fingers along the fur behind his ear, the spot he always leaned into, even on the worst days. "You did good, partner." He didn't wag his tail, but his eyes closed. That was enough. They drove without speaking. No radio, no updates. Just the hum of tires and the quiet presence of 2 shadows stretched long in the dusk. Back at the station, she handed the evidence over, filed the photos, logged the location, and she marked the girl Marin as still unaccounted for. But beneath that, she added something that wouldn't show in the database. Just a note, handwritten. One day she'll know someone kept looking. M Street. That night, when she got home, Bruno didn't go to his usual corner. Instead, he followed Lena to the couch and sat there beside her, head resting on her knee. No commands, no training, just bone-deep knowing. Outside, the wind picked up. Another case closed. But not complete. And somewhere in the dark, a little girl's face circled in blue remained in the eyes of a dog who never stopped remembering. The wind today didn't carry urgency. No scent of diesel. No hum of scanners. Just a low breeze moving through branches like a lullaby. It was the kind of afternoon the world seemed to forget existed, where time didn't tick, but breathed. Lena sat cross-legged on a worn quilt spread out over the damp grass, just off the tree line of Marlowe Park, facing the lake. The surface of the water shimmered silver blue, a mirror the sky trusted with its secrets. Bruno stood a few yards out, nose tilted to the wind, a neon green ball nestled between his jaws. He looked back at her, tail still, waiting. Lena smiled, soft and slow. "Well?" she called. "You just gonna stare me down or bring it here?" He didn't run, he never did unless it mattered. But he trotted back, dropped the ball near her foot with a gentle chuff, and sat, watching. Always watching. Lena leaned forward, picked up the ball, and this time didn't throw it. She just held it in her hands, rolling it gently between her palms, feeling its weight. "I think today," she said quietly, "we can let the world spin without us." A month had passed since the last van, since the wall of faces, since the final rescue. Some children were already home again, safe, healing. Others still slept with the lights on, speaking only to counselors or dogs. And then there were the names still in folders. First names only, no birthdays, no footprints on record. Children the world had misplaced without realizing. But even that darkness couldn't swallow everything, because sometimes a shadow is followed by a shape, and that shape by a name. Bruno nudged her knee, urging. Lena let the ball fly not hard, not fast, just enough. He ran, not like a missile, not like a K9, but like a dog who'd remembered how grass feels under his paws when the world isn't burning. She watched him as he slowed, scooped the ball, and turned back, tongue-lolling sideways. A soft bark, not sharp, but playful, carried across the field. She chuckled. "That was almost joy," she said aloud. He dropped the ball again. Saturday again, and then leaned, his weight pressed into her side like a silent confession. No sirens today, no earpieces, no forms to sign or reports to dictate, just the whisper of birds overhead and the lake breathing against the shore. Lena reached out and pulled Bruno closer. He came without resistance, his head settling against her chest like it belonged there. And maybe it always had. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to remember. Not the pain, not the cries, or the ledgers, or the hallways that smelled like bleach and fear, but the moments in between. The girl who drew Bruno in every color she could find. The boy who whispered. He came back, with a smile bigger than his scars. The mother who wept over the sound of her daughter's voice. And the dog, this dog who had chased ghosts until they had names and followed nightmares until they broke open into morning. She held him tighter. "You didn't just save lives, you know," she whispered into his fur. "You saved hope." Bruno didn't move, but something in him softened. His breathing slowed. Lena could feel it, his ribcage rising and falling like a tide that no longer feared the storm. He'd given the best of himself, and the world was quieter because of it. Later, as the sun began its slow surrender behind the lake, casting golden streaks across the field, Lena stood. She brushed grass from her jeans and looked down at him. Bruno was still lying there, eyes half-lidded, content. "You ready to go home?" she asked. He didn't answer, of course. He just stood. That was his answer. They walked together, no leash, no commands, just shoulder to thigh, step for step the way they always had. But this time, it wasn't toward a siren or a trail. It was toward peace. As they passed the park sign, a child on a bicycle rolled past, streamers fluttering, laughter bubbling. Bruno turned to look, just briefly. Lena saw it in his eyes. He remembered. He always would. But for once, the memory didn't weigh him down. It lifted him. Because this quiet joy in an ordinary park, that was the reason he had fought so hard. Not just to end the dark, but to make room for this light. And in that moment, under the soft hush of leaves, Lena whispered what her badge never taught her, what no file could contain. "Hope deserves this," she said. "A quiet park, a dog at peace, and a world that remembers." Bruno leaned into her leg, and they kept walking. "Thank you for sharing this story with me. It reminds us how deeply animals, especially loyal companions like German shepherds, touch our lives. Their instincts and unwavering devotion often guide us through our darkest moments, offering comfort and courage in ways words can't express. These dogs teach us about trust, hope, and the quiet strength found in a steadfast presence beside us. If you've ever felt the special bond that grows between a person and their dog, something beyond commands and training, a connection that speaks softly in moments of stillness, there are gentle ways to nurture and deepen that relationship. Exploring simple techniques that honor your dog's nature can open new doors to understanding and mutual respect, enriching the life you share. Whenever you feel ready, consider seeking out resources that resonate with your heart, places that focus on kindness, patience, and listening. They can help you discover new ways to communicate and connect, not just as owner and pet, but as lifelong companions. Your journey together is unique, and every moment shared is a gift worth cherishing. Take it one step at a time, with love guiding the way.